Hey, what's good, everybody? Thank you all for coming in. Thanks for those that are waiting. We're waiting, just setting some things up, and yeah, now we're good to go. So, yeah, for tonight, we have two special guests. We got Alejandro and Michael Knowles. Just kidding, he's not here. But yeah, Alejandro, welcome. It's good to see you after some time. And if I'm not correct, you were the first guest on our show when Juan and I were there.
Was I really? I think so, right?
Yeah, you were the first one. You were what kind of propelled us to continue to go on, and then we met more people, and here we are today. So
Thank
yeah,
you.
man. Well, now it's just me, but it's all good.
Well, shout out to Juan Choloa,
Yeah,
wherever
shout
he's
out to
at.
Juan, wherever he's at in Alabama right now.
And thanks for having us again on your platform, Marcus,
No,
as always. And hello to everybody out there. And a big hello, Piali Ikni, Jocelyn. I know you're out there, Bishkwe, and all my other relatives up in the north and to the south, and the
yeah.
east and west.
Welcome everybody, east, west, north, south, and all our friends. So, good question, Juan. What is the main point at the moment?
Is that
So,
Juan Choloa?
I think it's a different one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So tonight we are. Oh, I know who this is, but I guess just saying hi. I hope.
Well,
But
I mean, I don't know if I pronounced it right. That's my friend Ambishque, Christy, up north.
okay, Bishkwe, nice. Good to hear from you, Bishkwe. So yeah, tonight we are kind of gonna rewind a little bit and kind of go over the main point that IP has stood for. And also review a video of Michael Knowles. And the point I'm referring to is us, many of us, seeing ourselves as native, despite many of the objections that people propose or pose for us. So yeah, I think this should be a good video. Alejandro and I are just gonna critique or give our critique about this video about Michael Knowles. I don't want to spill too much about it, and just gonna catch up with our friend here. So, Alejandro, how have you been, man? Like I said, it's been a while. You've been doing good down there in the South.
Yeah, here in Central Texas, Somi. We've been really busy family wise and work wise, and we're getting out of a little bit of a economic slump. But I think my family passed those trials, and we're getting out of it, and work's been picking up. And as I mentioned earlier, the brown continent hasn't been laid to rest, but it's been lying slightly dormant for a while. And we put up a ton of information over the past couple of years, or actually the past 4 years, and people can look it up on Instagram, Brown Continent. Tons of information, lots of images, lots of resources with great articles concerning identity, and all the European entrapments and obstacles that we have to face when we're trying to reclaim our ancestral, authentic ancestral identity, who we really are. But we'll be picking up again. I think the Facebook is still somewhat active, and we have a channel on YouTube called Brown Continent. Also, with only one video up. There's an old Brown Continent on YouTube. We don't know who did that really. That was back in when it started in 2012. But you'll recognize the logo on YouTube, which is from Instagram. And we got one really long, really good video out there concerning identity, and we encourage everyone to share that far and wide. It's very informative, very thought-provoking, and it's graphic too. So it's entertaining. But we're gonna come back with it and prepare our people for the 2030 census. And that's not the means to an end, but the real goal is to have our people awaken to their real and true identity.
Hey, appreciate you sharing that. Uh,
Thanks.
yeah, of course. And I think I wanted to add that you also kind of worked as a teacher. You would work with classes, if I'm not correct. Sorry, I
Yes.
know it's not completely accurate what I'm saying, but okay, yeah. And you would work with. Sorry, yeah, you can go.
Oh yeah. Not a problem. Thank you. It was the Eagle Academy, Cuautli, Academia Cuautli. Uh, I had the opportunity of helping an elder teach there, and I would help instruct the dancing. We would share one ceremonial dance with the children, and then for their graduation, they all, you know, we had them dress in regalia that we would make for them, and we would all have the dance while their parents watched. But the important part about it is that's where we were able to develop a curriculum for these children who are the majority of them are from the south, from Mexico and Central America, and with a map exercise and a bunch of pictures that I got off the internet and from friends on social media, uh, we developed a really cool game, or like an exercise, a teaching exercise where they're able to distinguish their Turtle Island or Native American identity. And it took years of like playing with maps and trying to figure out how can we make these children realize who they really are and where they're from. And we finally we hit the jackpot, a few years ago. I think it was like in 2019, where the children, without any doubt, knew that they were Native American, and they were saying it all the time in class. And they were saying it in Spanish, somos nativos de este continente. We're natives of this continent, and it was really good. So I did that exercise with a group of teachers and adults, and that was very entertaining too, because you know it took them a while to figure it out, and you would think that they would have probably known more, but I got to see how the academic mind operates, because the pictures, they were trying to be very creative, and just because somebody looked like they were from somewhere, which of course is the intent of the exercise, they place them on the map. And then when you see all those brown people actually originate from Turtle Island, uh, the entire continent, all the way down to Patagonia from Alaska, they flip out. They're like, "Oh my God, what this?" I said, "Yeah, these are actual pictures from today. I'm not using historical pictures, And we do, with that map exercise. The important part is, yes, we do use the classification of race, because that's what the majority of people around the world know today. It was a German anthropologist who invented the classification of race. With white, black, brown, red, and yellow. So we don't refer to them that way, but we did distinguish them at one point or another, where we asked the children, are you from Africa? No. Are you from Europe? No. Are you from Asia? No. Okay. Then where are you from? From here. Who are the original people from here? And they said Native Americans. Okay. Now you know who you are, and we have to use those classifications, because that's what the majority of people know today. Correct. Blumenbach was a German anthropologist who created the classification of race. So like many horses, a Lakota ancestor said that, I'm going to use the tools of the colonizer. And I had a dream where he said he saw his children outrunning the white people in their own shoes. So we're going to use their tools to awaken our people. And that's what we did.
But here's where I think we're running into some contention, not for me, but others, which
Okay.
don't like to use the word like race because they say it's a social construct, right? So, what do you say to that? Because I'm sure you've encountered that before.
Oh yeah, and over time, after studying and investigating and having an answer to that, yeah, we develop a set of answers, because first we have a plan, and we offer solutions. After, where we're in the beginning, we identify the problem. Problem is that people don't know who they are. So we use the current tools that we have, to awaken our people and make them realize. So yes, I've been told that race is a social construct. Okay, what do you mean by that exactly? What do you mean? What do you mean? What is a social construct, and why is race a social construct? And they stay quiet. Okay, so then now I know you're just parroting what other people are saying, and they don't really know why they're saying such a thing. So I tell them, no, it's not a social construct. Race is a European created construct. It was a concept created by Europeans, specifically a German anthropologist, who classified people into X amount, like 4 or 5 groups or racial categories. And ever since then, well, he did it with the means of like putting Europeans or white people or Caucasians up at the front, where they were the more, that they were superior in many ways, and now we're using it to turn the tables and break that down. So yeah, I always ask people, what do you mean by that? And then they'll be like, well, it's they don't know what to say. They're just parroting.
Yeah, I appreciate you answering that, Alejandro.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, and I think that all the hard work that you guys did really did pay off, because I'm not sure if you saw the video that I made where the Native American population went up like by 5 million or something
Yeah.
over the past decade, which is good. But then, when I was talking with my friends and everything, there could be some bad things about that. And what do I mean by that? I mean by, like, you have the Cherokee princesses, right? The ones that have the great Cherokee princess, usually, or I think they're the white Americans or white Canadians, for that matter.
Right.
But now you have, like, the black, African Americans going on some other crazy story about, like, we're the original people, but I won't get into that. But yeah, so I think it's definitely paid off in the long run, despite, like, how should I say, the wolves in sheep's clothing, you could call them.
Yeah, no, I agree. And a couple years ago, we were gonna go live with I think it was Sitlali Anawak on Instagram. I said, hey, we should do a video on the sudden increase in the native population from 2010 to 2020. I think it almost doubled from the 2010 census. And if you look at the 2000 census, it was almost like way less than half of what it was in 2010. So we know that not that many people were using the census to identify themselves as Native American in 2000. And we did see an increase in 2010. Looking back, I mean, I wasn't into that back then, but when you look at 2020, it almost doubled. So it's not that Native people, Northern Natives, all of a sudden reproduced in mass amounts. We have to thank our people, the Southern Natives, who took part in this as well, who by the thousands and thousands on a regular basis have been reclaiming their original identity, their true selves. And I understand about the backlash. We're gonna have to deal with that eventually, but or repercussions of a lot of people jumping on this bandwagon. And I think they're just being manipulated. And we did write an article on Brown Continent. I think it's on our webpage on browncontinent.com. If it looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, and walks like a duck, then hey, it must be a duck. We can spot each other out easily, and we know who is native or of native ancestry just by looking at them. And yes, there are a lot of like white passing people, white passing natives, and then also African Americans who have native ancestry. But if you're gonna talk the talk, you gotta walk the walk. Everyone has their shared struggles. Everyone has their own personal struggles in this, and nobody's trying to take away any struggle from anybody else. And this is not we've gotten some backlash You're
Sure.
taking away the struggle from real Native Americans that suffer. I was like, well, what about the Southern natives who are suffering too? It's like no one. This is not about a what is it called, a suffering Olympics. Well, we suffer more than you, therefore we're more real than you are. Oh, well, we suffered more than you too. And so that's how they use these things against us. So that to keep us at odds with one another.
Yeah, I meant to ask about that. Like, I've seen positive and a little bit, not so much negative, but just different critiques of their thought from northern natives' thoughts on this, like what I support, what we support. But I guess I really haven't met too many like southern natives, and I mean when I mean northern natives, I mean those from communities, right, from tribes. But those from tribes in the south, and I know like through Juan's video, he had a lot of support for his tribe in Mexico. But I was curious, like, what feedback did you get from those, like, in Mexico and in South America, if you did, which I'm sure you did meet some, but did they have any thoughts of like what you stood for with like us seeing ourselves as native, or I should say we stand for, but yeah, you know what I mean.
Yeah. Oh, and I apologize though, but I also want to mention all the other organizations out there that were doing the same thing. This is not, the identity movement was not exclusive to us, but we did push a lot. But we want to, there were a lot of other people involved in it as well. Other organizations who were pushing for people. And I remember this one elder from it's not the Alabama Cushada over in East Texas. He was from Louisiana. Chief Davis was his name, if I remember. But he talked about Southern natives, that one day he wants to see when our Southern relatives and the Northern relatives unite as one again, like we used to be before the invasion. But as far as like feedback from our farther south relatives, we created an alliance with a brother from Peru, is Hui Chao. He's an indigenous rights lawyer, and he travels all over the continent, all over, from Patagonia to Alaska, literally. And he knows a lot of people in up north in Canada and the United States. And he really liked the concept of a brown continent, a unifying factor for all brown Turtle Islander Native American people. He liked the idea of the identity movement, for people to be able to reclaim their identity.
That's great.
And reclaim their homeland. We got really good feedback from a few people in Central America when we first started the ID Native 2020 page on Facebook. And a lot of people from Mexico, they were very proud to say that they were Native American or indigenous, that they were original to this continent, this land. So we've gotten some really good feedback. The only negative feedback from the South were like people who are pro Spain or pro European.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's great that you got a lot of
And
positive
very
feedback.
few, and also even and a lot of them were browner than brown. It just shows how, like, and then you get the same. You get the same hogwash with the whole like mestizo thing. No, we're mestizos. We're not. We're mixed. We're not Native American anymore.
Well, here's my problem with these Hispanistas is that they have this like weird thought process where they just assume that like we hate like our Spanish roots. And I never once said, if you look through all my videos, I never once said I hated it. I hated them. I acknowledge that they're there, but I stick with my native identity and who I am. I mean, obviously, am I going to go and call myself a Spaniard?
Yeah.
I mean, if you just look at me, like obviously I clearly look native. But you'll get a different response from like other people as well. But that's what I like stand for. I mean, I have other what else? Like I was like 4% like or 3% Nigerian and like 1% like Jewish. Again, I acknowledge all of that. That's there, but I stick with what I see as the most realistic.
The worst feedback comes from our own people. We get those are the ones promoting the European myth of a Métis or mestizaje or mestizo. You know, the French did the same thing that the Spaniards did. You know, the
Mm,
Spaniards are the ones who created the mestizo myth. You know, when they raped the women, and the offspring was then, you know, like I think Juan Choloa and you shared this on a show where in 1563 the king of Spain made a decree, or it was the viceroy of New Spain, that the offspring would not be allowed to reintegrate or go back or have any contact with the ancestral, the native community,
yeah,
that they were going to be put on a path towards Spanish European assimilation.
yeah,
And you know, and we say, just, you know, mixed blood does not mean mixed race. I mean, don't get it wrong. You know, don't get it wrong, don't get it, you know, we don't have to have these competitions on being correct, because we get a lot of flack also for using the term Native American, but we know that's not the right word. We all have our own original authentic names for our communities, our nations. But right now, since millions of our people do not know what community or nation they originate from, they do know the term Native American. You know, and that's where we get a lot of like, oh, it's a colonizer term. Yeah, but that's what millions of people recognize. They know exactly what a Native American is, that it's somebody original to the so-called American continent. You know, so if you get up on your soapbox and you want to say, I'm so and so, I am so and so, and I'm Native American, in less than 3 seconds, you just told a million people from around the world who you are and where you're from, and they know that within 3 seconds. Instead of trying to use, you know, a lot of people go into these like intelligence gymnastics about trying to be correct in the proper term. And sadly, they have no plan, they have no solution, they don't have a strategy. You know, they're just a bunch of naysayers who don't want to get on board because of one little thing that they find incorrect, or they want to look for that because, and that's sad. That just talks about the competition. Like we're like crabs in a bucket fighting each other, you know? And it's like, look, this is a winning strategy and it's only temporary. This is not permanent. We're not going to, exactly, it shows the Stockholm syndrome, you know? People do not want to use strategy. They would rather be correct. They would rather like show their like mental prowess of like explaining things with big words, long sentences, instead of saying one simple term that hits the nail on the head. I think, you know, that's sad, you know, that the majority of the backlash comes from our own people, you
yeah,
know, but they're also a small group. We've gotten the majority of our people on board, you know.
yeah. And I think that's the greatest thing to look forward to is just how many people you have, you know, following you that really support you, that have listened and were open minded. And you know, I try to go into the videos as being as respectful as I can, and I think that's really helped in the long run. I know, like Juan and I made a couple of videos in the early stages of this channel where we like went after a couple YouTubers, but you know, it is what it is.
The
Um,
roastings.
yeah, the roastings. Yeah, haven't done those in forever, but yeah, I think you mentioned Metis. Isn't that centered around native the native identity a little bit? I thought they had received the government cards or something. I thought it's more centered around being native than mestizo is. Or am I wrong? I don't know
I don't
100%
know,
sure.
honestly. From the little that I've learned from some relatives up there, uh, again, you know, a lot of white people are jumping on that whole Métis thing, the Metis or Métis,
Hmm.
uh, you know, using it for their own benefits, you know, and these people look like I don't know, like George Bush. You know.
Oh, they don't. Okay. Hey, thanks, Destiny. I appreciate that. I swear I saw a video. I thought I did, but it must have been something else. My bad.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, I can only go from memes, and then also like people who are promoting the I guess the Métis subgroup or nation, or I don't know how they refer to themselves, but I think they had a large increase in their ranks over the past 4 years. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting. Like in Canada, I don't have that much knowledge of the Native American communities up there, but I have a couple friends, Native friends from Canada, so I've learned a lot. But I need to learn a little bit more, do some research. I see Godzilla is in here. Interesting. He's quite a funny character, I'll say, but I'll leave it at that. So yeah, Alejandro, I appreciate you telling me about the different types of feedback that you would get, because I had a lot of like long-term goals, for this channel, and they're still there, but I think like just the main goal is just like waking people up in some way, whether that's like through videos or through chat groups or just through the Instagram page. I think that's just the main point that I really like to get across, but of course I enjoy making other content as well. But yeah, guys, thanks to those that were in the chat here, leaving comments, very helpful. If you're enjoying the video, please don't forget to leave a like. But yeah, so I think it's time we get to what do they call it? The meat and potatoes of this.
Oh yeah,
I think
you're gonna put our guest on. Your
we're
other
gonna
guest?
get our guest on, Michael Knowles. He's a very well-known comedian. I'm kidding. I mean, I will say this, and he does point out a lot of things, not a lot, but some things to me that like are kind of crazy that I don't agree with that he exposes, but that's all that I'll talk about. But yeah, overall, like he has said some pretty derogatory things about people, and obviously what we're going to watch is him talking about Native Americans and his views on I think what was the argument that the professor was saying was that like he believes that natives should be able to travel through any country they want.
I only saw the YouTube short, and I know it's part of a longer video, and I couldn't find it. And I'm almost positive it's on one of his on one of his videos on his channel. But some man said something about, well, what about the Native Americans? Something about getting the land back or and then Michael Knowles just goes off on him, and we can, after you run the video, we can give a psychological breakdown of his demeaning behavior and why it's typical of.
Yeah, definitely. That sounds good.
Justifying, the atrocities to steal land.
Yeah, he said some pretty crazy stuff, if I remember this. But I'm gonna go ahead and share the video now, so y'all can grab your popcorn. Do we want to make some critiques in the middle of the video or watch the entire thing? I should have said that like earlier before we started. I guess we can just watch the whole thing. Or maybe
we can watch the whole thing. What do you think? And then rewind it and critique.
Sure. Yeah. And guys, this is just like 3 minutes something long, like 3 to 4 minutes. So yeah, let's go ahead and share my screen here. Let's watch Mr. Knowles. Where's he at? And surprisingly, I think he went to like Columbia or somewhere. He went to a pretty prestigious university.
Wow.
So despite his rhetoric that he says. So I believe this is it. Can you see my screen, Alejandro?
Yes.
Cool. Okay. Let me just turn off that music and we'll be good to go here. Where's that at? Okay, cool. So let's begin.
I also am Italian American, and I'm a full-time professor here. I also am Italian American, and I happen to agree with the protester in the back.
Well, I have to say, as a professor, that you would come. I really appreciate that, because I know students come out a lot, but professors don't always come out to hear opposing points of view. So that's a wonderful thing.
It's my duty. But
I've left you speechless.
you
I've
have,
dazzled you.
Thank you. In 1492, before a racist and genocider came to this land, there were people living here. Every inch of this land was occupied.
Just as a matter of history, not every inch of the land was occupied. There were huge areas that were completely wilderness.
I was quiet the entire time you spoke. Those people still exist. The North American indigenous people, Central and South American, they're still here. And I would like to know how you can say that they have no ancestral claim to this land, and that as a white person, you can say that they cannot migrate freely and cannot use the land freely that they rightfully own and have for thousands of years.
Well, Mike, I'd like you to be more specific. Which people specifically and which land specifically? Because there were lots of different peoples in the northern and southern, in North America and South America at the arrival of Christopher Columbus. So which people do you think have a claim to which land?
I'm talking about the Native Americans.
But there were many different Native American
Would you
tribes.
like me to name all the tribes?
Yes, and I'd like you to name, and the reason I would like you to name all the tribes is because there were many tribes who conquered many other tribes. So just as an example, thank you. Just as an example, the Comanche Indians come in and they conquer areas run by the Apache Indians. Now the United States comes in and it owns that land. To which tribe should that revert? To which tribe should that land revert? The Comanche who had it before us, or the Apache who had it before them? Moreover, for the people who still exist, you're referring to Christopher Columbus in an ahistorical way by calling him some sort of racist or some sort of genocidal maniac. The man never committed any sorts of genocide at all, and he was actually known among the Spanish explorers for his good treatment of the natives. That point is neither here nor there. And I encourage people to read biographies of Christopher Columbus because there's a lot of historical fiction out there. The point on that is that when the Spanish came to this country, and to this continent, they did create a new race known as Latinos. This is a mixture of Spaniards and Native American populations. So if we are going to revert certain land to Native populations, why would we not then immediately take that land away from them because they also descend from Spanish explorers? In what sort of atomized way would you define your own race, your own identity? I think this is a very backwards and ultimately impossible view of personal identity that puts your stock in some particular ancestor rather than something that is larger than yourself. I think it's a madness of the modern left, and it leads to crazy policy proposals, such as saying that somebody who descends from a native population in Colombia has a right to move to any apartment he wants to in New York because of race or something. We can certainly have a response.
Thank you for not answering my question, and in the future,
I think I did answer you. How specifically could I answer your question?
If you could not lower the microphone until the person's done speaking, I think that'd be better for everyone. Thank you. That's all.
So you were done speaking. I think the gentleman did just fine then.
So
Don't get emotional, anybody. Don't get emotional. That's like the worst mistake anybody can make.
Yeah, he made a lot of errors in that little speech, and like what Destiny said, he like had he prepared that for that like moment. He was ready all his life for that.
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
There were so many things wrong and inaccurate for what he said, and that really shows you that someone with a Harvard degree can still say really stupid stuff and look really dumb. You know? Not
only that, but intentionally stupid, intentionally ignorant, and I think if anything, he might have a degree in like public debate more than anything, because he didn't answer the man's question. All he did was railroad him completely and throw him just a complete mixture of not even factual information, just tidbits of larger stories and larger pictures to railroad this guy. And the guy even knew it. He said, "Thanks for not answering my question. You know, you didn't." He just completely railroaded him. The guy Michael Knowles just went off the deep end on purpose. And he didn't answer that guy's question. Nobody wants to touch that issue. You know?
Well, he tried to. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, he tried to use he used mental gymnastics in response to who should get the land. He was trying to be a smart aleck about it. Obviously, like, it's going to go to the recent tribe or community that was there, in my opinion. Like, and that should be the end of the story. So
yeah,
I think
if you ever get caught in a situation like that, do not get confused, do not get phased, and just tell the guy, I was like, no, this is what I'm talking about. All Native Americans, all Native Americans from Alaska to Patagonia, all of them had suffered the same consequences with the European invasion. Yeah, name all the tribes, exactly. It's nothing but trickery. And remember, I remember a line from John Trudell's poem, they came to confuse and attack. And that's what he does. He confuses and then he goes in and attacks. Typical. I mean, his mentality is obviously no different than the original European colonizers that came, divided our people and used them against each other. I mean, the guy had a very valid point. Michael Knowles will not ever touch the truth of theft, rape, murder, stolen land, and stolen people, and ransacked resources. Nobody wants to touch that. A lot of us already know the truth about Christopher Columbus. If it wasn't Europeans in general, and if more specifically, Christopher Columbus began the sex trade on our continent. He began to kidnap 9-year-old girls and began to sell them off to his captains and other soldiers and other people in higher ranks of the military, and they were prostituted, and they kept them as sex slaves. 9-year-old girls from the islands, native girls, and anybody can read Bartolomé de las Casas' books, Tears of the Indians or The Devastation of the Indies, and he enumerates in black and white all the atrocities that Christopher Columbus and the Spaniards committed upon the people and upon the land. I mean, we're talking about grabbing babies by their legs, bashing their heads in to break their skulls on the rocks, stealing them from their moms, cutting the breasts off of women, cutting up, and also like killing the men, cutting up all their body parts and feeding their war dogs human blood, human flesh, to whet their appetite, to be efficient attacking machines for killing more original people, more native people.
Yeah, and I read a book. It was like a 400 page book about Columbus and his logs that he made. He was not revered as someone that was like kind to natives. That was the biggest lie. That, and he pretty much said that Latinos were a race.
We'll get on that in a second. We'll get on that, but the historical part, yeah, Christopher Columbus, he was a genocidal maniac. The man was, I mean, somebody who has the mental capacity to dream up of committing such atrocities, obviously has mental issues, severe mental issues. They're anti-human, anti-life, and all the Spaniards that came with them, they were a bunch of prisoners, a bunch of, brigands. They didn't bring anything good. I mean, and it's all out in the open, but just little by little, it's coming out. Anybody can watch the PBS miniseries, We Are Still Here. Each of those talks about land theft and mass murder, even from when the Pilgrims arrived. They stole corn that they found buried on the beach by the natives. That's how they stored corn for the winter, to preserve it. And they even left an IOU, a piece of paper in one of the sand pits where they took the corn and said, we'll owe you for this when we can. Who's the first welfare class? They are. They came in, they took, they borrowed, they stole, they never gave back. What about the Indian boarding schools and the residential schools? What about the encomienda system, which is the Spaniards' version of the plantation system, and all the atrocities they committed against our people throughout Mexico and Central and South America? You know, I mean, you don't have to go far to read about this, you know, where this guy is calling everything else that doesn't back up his opinion historical fiction, you know, when it is historical fact, you know. And it's sad that people like he still has to act that way, because they don't have the maturity to say, you know what happened here was, you know, was beyond comprehension. What happened here is what made us rich, and we're still benefiting from that to this day, you know. And they won't admit that. That's the last thing any of these people ever want to touch, because they need to keep their people brainwashed. They need to keep their followers, the majority of them are white, to, you know, to keep them from ever thinking that they could be guilty of anything. So they erase our history on purpose, intentionally, and we shouldn't get upset about that, because that's what they're good at, rewriting history. You know, rewriting history, erasing anybody else's history, and erasing their existence in one form or another. So he's just doing what they've been doing all along. It's no big deal. We shouldn't get fazed, and it's not our job to convince them otherwise. Many of them are going to keep thinking the way they are, and we know that there's a lot of white people that don't think that way, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
That's
it's
a
like,
good thing. Sorry.
Michael Knowles is a perfect example of those people that are open practitioners of amnesia, and they try to instill the amnesia on the rest of the American people, the white people, descendants of the original Europeans, so that they don't feel bad, and they continue being who they are without feeling guilty. It's that linear analytic thought. It's that linear thought, that disconnect that they all suffer from. That's why he's able to say the things he can without feeling any compassion, any remorse, any feeling for what happened on this continent. Because this continent is one gigantic crime scene that they're trying to keep buried, you know, but the bones are going to keep coming up. But it's that linear thought, that analytic thought. Analysis is like it's the breaking down of something in order to understand it. They break things apart, they dismantle them, they fragment them. It's fragmented thinking. It's not wholesome, connected thinking of seeing everything as one indivisible whole. So they suffer from this like soul gap, a disconnect, which is why they don't care, they don't feel. People like him, I'm not saying everybody.
Yeah,
you know?
I mean, that's sorry.
And you know, it's the same thing, and that's why they have this theology of no matter what you do, when you go to church on Sunday, your sins will be wiped away and you can start all over. Oh, I messed up again. I'm going to go back on Sunday and ask for forgiveness, and you know, I'll be good as new. It'll be like I never did anything. You know, they suffer from a serious disconnect, you know, to creation, to living, all being. Sometimes I feel bad for them, you know.
Well, yeah, just like people like Michael Knowles that have this sort of mindset that will never like open their mind to different things, and always just like be focused on thinking that they are better than natives. And that's what it seemed like the way Michael Knowles was talking with his mannerisms as well. But it's good to know that there's a lot of people that, you know, that aren't native that are really open to supporting, you know, this cause and, you know, native rights too. So despite like the things that we see in videos from like people that aren't native that are negative, there's a whole lot of people that, you know, support us too. So
yeah,
it's just really reassuring, you know, because
historically there's always been a contingent of Europeans that have been on our side or helped us out in one way or another. You know, we're not trying to erase them. You know, and you know, when you said demeanor, when you said demeanor, oh yes, and this person says the guy didn't present any facts. He's just talking points to conform his audience. Yeah, and everybody clapped for him because he shut the guy up who brought common sense to the table, and he shut him down. And honestly, we have to ask ourselves, who is Michael Knowles? Who is he representing? Why did he get so defensive? You know, and you could tell towards the end he was just jibber jabbing. He was just like stuttering and pulling things left out, you know, whatever he could out of his sleeves, you know, looking for that ace card. But I was like, I got to keep pulling cards and I'm gonna keep throwing them at this guy, you know, and eventually I'm gonna get this ace card and really shut him up, and I'm gonna get his standing ovation. I'm gonna get people to clap for me. So who does he represent? Who does he work for? Is he defending all the money and time he's invested in his Harvard education? Because that's what they taught me. And if I go against that, my little house of cards comes crumbling down, and I mean nothing. And then I'm not going to get donations from people. I'm not going to get talking gigs to go and shoot my mouth off anywhere, you know, and get asked and be invited to universities to just shoot my mouth off, you know. So he can lose that. So we're talking about financial interests could be at stake, his Harvard education, his constituents who are propping him up and funding him to keep these talking points alive and to keep the American people with, you know, practicing amnesia, historical amnesia. And maybe he's probably even being funded, or he represents a much quieter hidden group who says that at all costs, we will find a way to never bring up anything having to do with rape, theft, and murder, and the stealing of land and people, and the continued ransacking of resources, because we're all profiting from that.
Yeah.
We have to ask ourselves that, everyone. It's like, he's just he maybe, you know, does he have a brain of his own, or is he just a puppet? You know, who's pulling his strings?
Yeah, that's what you gotta wonder too.
Mr. Knowles.
I forgot it wasn't Harvard. I looked it up and it was Yale.
Yale. Oh,
an elite college nonetheless.
Yeah, Ivy League. You know, it's supposed to be top. Top what? I don't know.
Yeah, I know. Well, and that's the other thing that I wanted to move on to was, well, someone asked if we're willing to, we're going to open the stream. You want to open the stream later? If anyone wants to talk? Or do you want to keep it between us, Alejandro?
We can open it later. Did you want to go over some more of the points you said you wanted to touch on?
Oh, yeah, definitely. It was when he brought up Latino, right? Like,
oh, yeah.
Latino is a race. Again, the guy that went to an elite school and said that Latino was a race. Like, you can look up in the dictionary. You can, like, Google search what Latino means.
Yeah, I mean,
so
he's a complete, all right. He's an embarrassment to himself, you know, but again, there's money at stake. So, I mean, people will go to great lengths, you know, to prop up that, you know, to prop up a house of cards and try to keep them standing. But yeah, again, the typical obstacle that that many of our people have faced, the Latino obstacle. Mixed blood does not mean mixed race. Latino is not a race. Latino is could be what actually, well, it has to do with Latin from the Roman Empire originally. And on our Facebook page, ID Native 2020, Census 2020, we even had some Italians helping us out. They were telling people who said, we're Latino, what are you talking about? He said, no, we're the real Latinos, we're Italian. We are the descendants of the Latin people of the Roman Empire. And they started saying Italy has its own people, its own set of cultural values. He's all, nobody else can be Latino unless you're a descendant of the ancient Roman Latin people. You know, they were helping us out, setting the record straight. It was really interesting. I took screenshots and I do have them saved somewhere. But yeah, I mean, what can you say? Michael Knowles is being paid to be foolish, intentionally stupid, you know, just propping up an illusion again. blindside our people.
Well, I was talking to someone earlier, I forgot who it was, and they believe that like countries like Russia and even China really try to infiltrate certain parts of our internet to spread division and spread like certain conspiracies. Um, so there could be like, maybe I'm like sounding, I don't want to sound crazy, but there could be like foreign countries that really spread this insane like ideology or like divisiveness a lot to start like division and whatnot within like American society. So I don't know, when you were talking about like who's Michael Knowles like representing and whatnot, there are people like him that I think are really influenced by what they see on the internet. Um, and a lot of that, I mean, maybe it's even our own government, that wants to spread incite division, like I said.
They're the ones who benefit the most from keeping us divided and keeping all people divided and against all odds. Definitely.
Looks like we got a Spaniard, or not a Spaniard, a Hispanista in the chat.
Are they writing to us from Spain?
He's probably writing to us from the Canary Islands.
Keep it Iberian and keep it on Iberia.
Yeah, well, the crazy thing about the Canary Islands, which is, I think it was a prelude to what would happen to the Americas, was when the Spanish left to go on their expeditions, to say the least. They reached the Canary Islands, and they saw that there were like, I think they're Arab people that were there originally, and the Spanish fought them and pretty much wiped them out over time. So and they claim that for Spain, and that's what you see today. Of course, like every country, every people, all types of people like take over areas and whatnot. But I'm just trying to bring up like what happened in the Canary Islands was a precursor to what would happen when they reached the Caribbean islands. So yeah, hey, kind of a history nerd.
No, I agree. Same here.
I guess Marksman thinks that Hispanista came from his mom's basement. So, probably.
Yeah. Hopefully, it's in Iberia.
Maybe his stepmom's
Then I'll
basement.
believe he's a real Spaniard. And like, hey man, just leave us alone. Dude. We're on our continent. You stay on yours. We're having a conversation here.
Yeah, I mean, like I'm always gonna get trolls, regardless. Yeah. But anyway, did we have something else we wanted to cover about Knowles? Did he mention something else on the end? Right? Wasn't it about people being able to traverse wherever they wanted in the Americas?
Oh yeah, he went off the stupid end. Somebody from Colombia wanted to take an apartment in New York.
That professor didn't even say that, did he?
No, but this guy just interjected. He just threw out a bunch of talking points. I mean, opinions, and just conjecture, just making things up. He's just throwing scenarios out there that he came up with. It's like we know where borders come from. We know that we Europeans were the ones who created the borders here. The one for the United States began in Virginia. And my family and I, we just watched The New World. I don't know how far back that one came out. It's in the 2000s, and it was this very interesting version of Pocahontas falling in love with John Smith. Was that his name? I think. Yeah, John Smith. And it played along those lines, but we know that Pocahontas was kidnapped and taken away. And more than likely she was probably raped without a doubt. The people who she comes from have those stories to share, but anyways, the point is that that was the founding of Jamestown and the James River. And once they established their colony and they survived the winter and and the home defense maneuvers of the Powhatan people, you know, they eventually, I think in the late 1600s or early 1700s, they declared the James River the border, where native people could not cross north of the James River, where they established Jamestown, or I don't know what other colonies or towns that they established, without the express permission of the colonizers. And the funny part is that if they were found on the north side of the James River, they were to either have a document in their hands giving them permission, or be in the presence alongside a white person that would vouch for them, that say they have business with me, they're here with me. They're not a hostile. Well, that terminology came in the 1800s, but they're not a savage, I guess, so to speak. They're not an enemy combatant. So from there, the border expanded over the years. It went all the way to the Mississippi River. First, the 13 colonies, they pushed our people back. And then they went all the way up to the Mississippi, and they pushed them all the way to Oklahoma Territory. And after that, they were surrounded, and they pushed all the way to the Pacific Ocean. You know.
Yeah, it's really sad.
And then they went to war to Mexico to establish their southern border as it is today. Mexico is nothing more than a Spanish colony as well. So we're seeing these Europeans going to war against each other over our homeland.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know what else. Association with that. You said I think you wanted to say something about the association of land back with the left.
Oh, well, yeah. Didn't he like associate? Yeah, he associated that with like leftist movements, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like, I don't consider myself a leftist.
Neither do I.
Yeah, so that's the thing that I think people look at. Maybe some people look at like what we stand for as like it being like extremely like left or like SJW. I'm like, I am not a leftist person.
Yeah.
I think it's the misconceptions that people make is always quite funny to me.
Yeah, I think they try to. It's just their way of demonizing.
Sure.
You know,
Yeah.
like, how dare you even think that the original people of this continent should have any of their original land back? You must be part of that leftist movement that's trying to destroy this country and bring it down. How dare you? You're not a, you know, it's just, you know, it's the push-pull politics they have Americans in, you know. You're either for this or you're for that. And if you're not for us, you're for them, you know. And that's none of our business, you know. We shouldn't get caught up in that completely, you know. We should just, we know what our mission is.
Yeah.
And who we are.
Yeah, same here. I think I see myself sometimes getting distracted by other things. And I have to like stay on the path of what this channel has stood for since its inception, creation. And that's just like, you know, waking people up in a way. Let people know like, you know, who they are, to those that want to listen, of course. But yeah, someone said here, we're evil commies.
They're the evil ones that ruined our homeland.
Yeah, we just made a video.
They keep trashing the earth.
Yeah, I just made a video the other day saying how like I very much like staunchly oppose communism. Well,
those are all European ideologies: capitalism, communism, anarchism, and those are the things that have our people at odds with one another, because we're fighting over European concepts and theologies and religions and, you know, inventions, you know, when all we had to do, we had our own societies, our own forms of governance, you know. And of course these people are not going to, they're not going to mention that the United States form of government is based on the Haudenosaunee form of government, you know. And they won't say that, they're not going to mention that Haudenosaunee elders were kept up on the second floor of the so-called Liberty Hall in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And when these when these Europeans came to a head, and they're like, God, well, what do we do in this situation? They came to a stopping point. They didn't know how to proceed. They would go upstairs and ask the elders question. Look, we came to this and that, while they're drafting their constitution and drafting whatever else. And then the elders would tell them, oh, all you have to do is this, the decision would be based on this or that. And I think it was Thomas, Native American, the YouTube channel. He had something on his channel about that, where a Lakota man was talking about that interesting part of history. So whether they want to admit it or not, it's like, you're on Indian land, and many of the things you have are based on our ways. And if anything, we are the ones who Indianized the Europeans. We tried to tell them long ago about the importance of personal hygiene. They don't want to give us any recognition for that.
Yeah, I heard Shadlan was like really clean back in the day when it was there. I mean, like that's what the Spaniards said, that it was a real like beautiful, like clean place.
Right.
Like running
everywhere they went.
Yeah. Wanted to respond to Mr. Godzilla here because he always leaves interesting comments for us. And I would say that even if I found out like who my biological family members were, and I happened to see that a cousin that like wasn't Native at all, whether it was white or black, or if I had like an aunt or something, I would still say that I'm Native. And you can say that like, oh, well, that's because like you're anglicized or whatever people call me. I think that it's important to look at like how cultures are, and there's going to be certain things that you're going to disagree with it in every culture. And I think that's something that I disagree with, at least in Latin culture, is like the view of like viewing Latino as mixed race, because anyone can identify as Latino. But yeah, that's just my thought to Godzilla. And then I wanted to respond
his comment. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, you're good. Someone said something about like communism is directly opposed to the capitalist imperialism that was responsible for colonialism. Sure. But my problem with communism is that like, look at how it's, ran in countries and in societies today. And I'm just going to go back to like the fundamentals of freedom, right? And like I said, I don't believe society can exist without having the three major components, and that's freedom of speech, freedom of press, freedom of association. If humans can't live in a society like that, then they're not free. And to be honest, it's not a society that I would want to live in, where the government controls so much of my life. I don't want to live in a world where I'm scared. But anyway, that's all. But I understand that, like, obviously, communism is meant to counter capitalism in some way, I guess. But I don't want to get too off track.
You bring up good points too, because I mean, this is the reality that surrounds us right now. Speaking like honestly, as this is the current reality that we're surrounded by. The whole capitalism antithesis with communism, and if our freedoms, like you said, those basic freedoms are our freedom to defend ourselves. I mean, every creature on earth has a self-defense mechanism. And if we're up against the wall, what are you going to do? You're going to fight. Eventually, you're going to fight and try to defend yourself by any means necessary, because the majority of us are pro-life in the sense of we are trying to survive. We want to stay alive. We want to preserve, our human dignity, our living, So, I mean, when that's taken away, then, something's not right. When a small group of people come and say it's for your own good. No, I think we instinctually know what's for our own good as far as being a human being, and having freedom. So,
yeah, freedom's important.
And again, I mean, if people really want to dig deep, a lot of the United States supposedly being a beacon of capitalism, a republic or a democracy, whatever you want to call it, a beacon of freedom, it's already becoming communist, whether you like it or not, by design, possibly. So,
Sorry.
it's hard not to get caught up into that, because I think a lot of white people, or Americans in general, they're starting to go through the situation we've been in since 1492. They're starting to see what it's like to be subjected to extreme poverty, their freedoms being taken away, where they're being licensed and taxed. They're under heavy surveillance. They're being watched. They're being spied upon. It's like, welcome to our world.
Yeah. Well, like you said, like a lot of Americans, even myself, like go through, like, I mean, I'm seeing it too from like different, political oppositions, rather if that's like from the right or like the left side. You just in forms of like silence and censorship in the littlest ways right now. But yeah. And I want to say that obviously the US government does like spy, and certain things are like censored, like Instagram does some pretty sneaky stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So does Facebook too. So
yeah, those are their platforms. They can do whatever they want with them, and until we have our own platform. And I think this is a good one right here, because I don't think we're being censored.
Yeah. But again, like, I mean, I go back to China. There's certain things that you can't say, and the government's like watching you. If you say it, then you're in trouble. I'll just leave it at that, because we want to go over some other points, and we're already over an hour. So
okay.
Yeah, not that we're on a time limit, but I know we want to move on to the next thing. And I think that was just like well, did we want to play the devil's advocate game? I think we kind of talked about that a little bit.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, man. So I kind of wanted to, for those that are watching right now, I want to play this little game with Alejandro where I would be the combined like Hispanista, like gatekeeper, just I don't want to say anti-native person, but yeah, just a person that very much would oppose Alejandro's views. So I think I would try to give him some questions and just see how he would respond, right? So,
right. Hey, Marcus, your identity now, your name is Miguel Knowles. You're half Spaniard and half English, or whatever Michael Knowles is. Italian.
Miguel Knowles. Yeah. So, I guess my first question to you, Alejandro, would be, why are you trying to spread this sort of like division in Latin America? Because in our society where we're from, we don't look at things as race. We look at these things through like a lens of like nationality, right? So we all see ourselves, let's pretend I'm from Guatemala, no, Mexico. We all see ourselves as Mexican, right? So what I see you doing is something that's trying to start like division. So stop it. Why are you doing this? I guess I should say.
What am I? Who am I dividing? Am I dividing Mexican people?
Yeah, you're dividing, Mexican people, and it seems like I said, you're creating division amongst Mexican people based off race, I should say. And to my understanding, in this society, we don't look at things off race. We look at things more based off class. If there is any type of discrimination, it's based off class and not race. So, what you're saying is silly. It's crazy. So debate me.
Well, what's silly is that you're referring to Native American people as Mexican. Mexican is a nationality created by the Spaniards children, the children of the original colonizers who came here to take all those lands from our ancestors. So when the children the children saw all the riches, all the resources leaving this continent and going straight to the king and queen of Spain, they said, we're going to fight mommy and daddy and we're going to take this from them, and we're going to take control of all the exports, and we're going to put a price on it because we can get rich off of that. Not the crown, not the crown's agents here on this land. The crown is far away. We can take these guys out and we can take control of this. And that's what happened. So they used a lot of native people for their cause. And there was this false revolution of Mexican independence in 1821. That's where the country of Mexico was created. And sadly, a lot of our people get confused. Mexican means indigenous. Mexican means Native American. It comes from an indigenous word. Well, guess who's been there to fool you from the very beginning? Mexico. So what? So what? Then what if they could have chosen any native word? You know? Mexico has now been warped to mean a nationality created by Spaniards, by Europeans, by the Gachupines, by the descendants of the original colonizers who said, we're going to take over the export of all these mineral resources and all the riches and all the land. It's going to be ours now. They created their little club. And around that time, there were similar revolutions throughout South America, all around the early 1800s, give or take 10 years before 1821 and a little bit after 1821. Bolivia, Argentina, Chile, Peru, they all rebelled against the crown, and they did the same thing. Mexico's first president, Iturbe, is a descendant of one of the royal families of Spain. If people want to research that, they can look, and you gotta ask yourselves, did things really change for the better? No. If anything, they probably got worse for our people, because they got more oppressive, and like they put a lockdown on our people there. They said, we got all this now. We're in control. We're taking this baby all the way, you know. We're taking this baby home. And it's the same thing happened throughout South and Central America, you know. But Mexico is still a Spanish colony, just like all these other countries throughout South and Central America. Brazil is a Portuguese colony, you know. Canada is a French and English colony. The United States is still an English colony. So Mexican's just a fake identity. It's a nationality created by the Gachupines or the Gachupines. I think it's Gachupines, where Gachupin comes from, which means pointed shoes. The Spaniards wore pointed boots.
Okay, I'm going to transform into Miguel on the fence, and this Miguel is going to pretty much look like, you know, I'm me, obviously.
All right.
But I have family, like distant family, or I guess aunts or uncles that, you know, are African. That might be African, right? Black. Or I have like a great or second uncle or something that's white or looks white passing. So you're trying to convince or once I can, open my mind up, right, to see myself as native, right? And I do look native, but I'm going to like provide some opposition. And one is that I have mixed families, and I have a couple relatives that aren't native at all. Two, I haven't lived the life of, in my view, who I see as like indigenous native, right? Because from what I've learned this year and a half of creating this channel, is that people in South and Central America have this view of indigenous people, which in ways makes sense, because that's how the culture is ran there, as indigenous people that live outside of an urbanized community or just out of a modern society and live in their own community, right? So how would you try to persuade me that like I could be more open to see myself as native, trying to like connect the dots? But I'm giving you two reasons as to why I might not. Again, like having like family that's not, some family members that aren't native, and then I don't live in that community. I don't live in that lifestyle. I'm a Ladino, as one would say in Guatemala. I live in the city.
Okay. Are you black or African?
Latino. No.
Are you white, European? No. Are you Asian? No? Okay. That only leaves one more race, Native American. Remember, There's only 4 races because that's all you know, okay? From your mindset, you're representing the people who think just like what you said. So if you're not from Africa, if you're not Caucasian, if you're not from Asia, that only leaves Native American. Latino is not a race. Your blood is not Latino. What's been put into your head is Latino or Hispanic. What's been put into your head is that now you're a Guatemalteco or Guatemalan. So that's what's been put in your head, but you're denying, but it's being done so that you don't come around to realize that you are in fact Indigenous or Native American, native to this, Turtle Island, this entire continent.
But I don't, even though I don't practice that culture, I live like in that. Does it go back to like me, like being taught that I'm not Native at all, right?
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Your race and your blood, your race is Native American. But anything else that's been imposed is only skin deep. If you let it, once you let that into your brain and your heart, it's going to be hard to let go of it. But only the truth can set you free.
Sure.
You come from people, your ancestors in Guatemala were caged, they were killed, they were beat, they were raped and tortured to the point where, and they were caged and taken away from their people and forced into living into European society, to where the invader was successful at convincing them that they were anything but native to that continent. So they disconnected them, much like a wolf is taken from the forest and put in a cage and bred with other captive wolves, and they're beaten, they're tortured and bred amongst each other, where the offspring now lives in captivity. You are that product. You were domesticated from being a wolf, connected to the natural world. Now you're something like a German shepherd. Now you depend on your master's handouts for survival. You depend on your master's protection for him to feed you in order for you to survive, because you can't go back out into the jungle and live off the land like your ancestors did. And don't worry though, there's hope. There's hope, because other people have been domesticated to the point of being poodles. So there might be some hope for you. Okay? Just go look at the temples out there in Guatemala. Take a look. Talk to your aunts and uncles and your relatives and ask them who they really are, where they come from, the original roots. Talk to your family members. That's what we tell our people. Look at your brothers and sisters. Look at their faces, your parents, your grandparents, your aunts and uncles. Do they look Caucasian? Do they look from African? Do they look like they're African? Do they look Asian? No, it's left, Native American. And so what if you had some European or African ancestors in there? It's what you feel inside too, man.
All right, now I'm triggered. I'm kidding. So before I transform into my final form, that kind of led me to a question, and that is like, it's interesting how so many Guatemalan cities are named, have like a Nahuatl sounding. They're Nahuatl sounding. A lot of them, if not the majority of them, have Nahuatl names. So it makes me wonder how many of those people in Guatemala could be the descendants of the Tlaxcalan people who were brought along for the ride, to say the least, that were when I think Pedro de Alvarado, it came to claim Guatemala as, well, it wasn't called Guatemala at the time, but as that area, as a part of Spain, he had like probably hundreds of thousands of Tlaxcalan soldiers with him. And it's crazy. It feels like they were the ones running the show. Why are all the names of these cities Nahuatl sounding? Why aren't they Spanish sounding?
Right.
Because you can see it in El Salvador, Nicaragua, I think Nicaragua, and Honduras.
No, in El Salvador, you have the Pipil and the
Yeah.
Cuscateca who are already speaking a form of Nahuatl. But I mean, it'd be great to have some people from there on the show, or ask them personally if it comes from, because Nahuatl reached down there from central Mexico. Uh, and I don't know to what effect the Tlaxcala people had on that area, because they settled in South Texas and northeastern Mexico as well. But I don't know of any Nahuatl named communities or areas. They even went to the Philippines. They went up to the coast, all the way along the west coast, up to Canada with the Spaniards, throughout Florida, Tennessee, Kentucky. I mean, they went everywhere with them, New Mexico.
There's a city in the Philippines called Mexico. It's pretty crazy, right?
Yeah.
It kind of goes back to, I don't mean to go off track, but I was talking with someone, he was from Myanmar, or Burma as I call it. And we were talking about colonialism, right? And how that country was a part of the British control. And I always wondered, how did the country, in the past, I wondered, how the heck did the British, I know they had advanced weaponry and whatnot, but how did they get all the way to Myanmar and be successful in their wars? Well, people don't really mention just how many soldiers from India played a part in the wars that they had with Myanmar and how they conquered the country. There was 4 wars before they conquered the whole territory, and the majority of the soldiers were Indians, or from Bangladesh, Pakistan, So it kind of goes back to just like how the Spanish in Mexico, just how many of these Spaniards were under the identity of, I want to say conquistadors, or how many were actually Tlaxcalan, right? How many were actually native? Because when you read about the Spanish settlements that the conquistadors set up across the Americas, they don't really say that people I think just get in the head that this is just a Spaniard settlement, or it's all Spaniards, but no, it's there's, if not over the population of these Spanish settlements are native people, right? Or mixed natives, or as they say, mestizos, but you know what I mean, right? I go off track, but anyway, onto my final form here, and I will be the triggered American, and I'll just say that I'm non-native, and I find what you're doing is somewhat offensive. Wait, no, let me change my name from Miguel. I'm gonna call myself Miguel. Huh?
Michael.
Michael? Okay, I'm Michael. And I think I see what you're doing, but I also think it's offensive because it seems like you're trying to somewhat not speak over natives from communities, but you haven't experienced what they've gone through, and you're not from a tribe. Therefore, why are you calling yourself native?
Well, can you specify the tribe? Because there were many tribes throughout the Americas. Which tribe exactly? Let's take, for instance, let's take the Tlaxcala people. Are you going to say that they invaded the northern United States before you guys even set up a single country and you were just 13 colonies? Let's get into that. And why not? You see, I'm playing the Michael Knowles part now on you.
Yeah, I see it.
Be specific. What tribe?
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, I'll just throw it back at at those people that way. But and then I will tell you, I was like, you know what? I know where you're coming from. You're scared. You're scared because we're still alive. You're scared because we represent what your ancestors could not fully exterminate. And what you cannot come to grips with is that you descend from those people and you're on our homeland.
What if I consider myself an open... Sorry.
I'm sorry, what?
What if I would say, well, I'm not racist. I'm way far. I'm a leftist and I'm open-minded and I support everybody, but I just don't agree with what you're saying.
Okay, well then give me your house then, Mr. Leftist. Give me your land. Let my family move in there. Start giving the land back then. If you're not racist, or if you're you feel that an injustice was committed upon our people. You know it was true, but you just don't want to admit it. Not even the so-called leftists. We're your allies. Oh, great, man. Can we go camp out in your front yard? Or, hey, let us take showers. Let us stay at your house. Oh, wait, no, but we're still on your side, you know. We're voting for the right people to help you all out. And it's like, it's the same. You really think they're gonna give it up and say, you know what, we're gonna find a way to go back to Europe here, right? No, of course not. And sadly, and this is not against the African American community at all whatsoever, but they're being manipulated. They're being put at the, under the spotlight with the whole, like the atrocities that Europeans committed with the slave trade and enslaving of African people. That will always come before them, before us, because we're the last thing that they want to touch. We're the last subject that anybody ever wants to talk about in politics. Because then that means it's like, oh, well, we took the lands unjustly. They'll never say that. So that's the last thing they ever want to touch on. That's the conversation they want to avoid. The can of worms is already open, but they just like want to act like, it's the what is it, the pink elephant in the room, or what is it, the big elephant in the room?
Yeah, the elephant in the room is
Yeah.
what they would say.
Yeah.
I wanted to say leftist because I was arguing with someone who called himself a leftist, and he didn't agree with what I was saying. He was like, I'm the most left person you'll ever meet, but I just don't agree with what you said. So I was like, okay, whatever, man. Like, but and it's funny because he was like Mexican American, but is what it is. Well, I appreciate you arguing with Miguel and Michael.
Your triple personalities.
Yeah, my triple personality disorder. I really
Hey, they you know what? These people have that. Look at Michael Knowles. Look at the way he busted into different characters, just like shooting from one to the other and just completely on self-defense and railroading this guy and not answering his question. It talks about the immaturity of these people. They're like children. They're like spoiled children. They break into the playpen. They break into your house. They take your stuff and they say, these are mine. You can't have them anymore. And that's the way they are today. Look at him. I mean, you really got to look at him. He's like a spoiled baby, a spoiled child. And people applaud him. They think that he's this hallmark of high intelligence. Oh my God, he's so eloquent. He speaks so well. No, he just runs over people, railroads them in favor of, his agenda, his people's agenda. Keep them on that amnesia train. You all did nothing wrong. Don't ever answer to these people or ask for forgiveness. You have nothing to apologize for. Yeah, you do. Because you're in possession of stolen land, stolen property. It's like, what if I broke into their house and I stole some tools, and before I die, I gave it to my child. I give it to my son. Hey, these are yours now. You can use them. Do whatever you want with them. They're in your hands. My son is now in possession of stolen property. Before he dies, he does that with one of his children or all his children. Here, split up these tools. You can use them for whatever you want. Use them. Now they're in possession of stolen property because it was taken without permission. It was stolen.
Let me use like a silly example of his stupidity when he said that. Like, well, there's one other thing I wanted to bring up is that like he specifically called out like Latinos, right? But there's clearly like Native people, in the U.S. and Canada that aren't 100% like Native, right? That have like DNA from either like Europeans or Africans as well. But notice that he goes after like Latinos. One point. The other point I wanted to bring out was like, okay, if he's going to say that about like mixed natives, then maybe it's not fair for me to call him a white Italian, as he says, because he's quite he has a little bit of the dark complexion, right? So he could be of Moorish descent. Obviously, I'm using his stupid example to say what I'm saying.
Right.
But see, just the things like that, like it doesn't hold water. in the end.
It
So,
doesn't. But you know, if people believe a lie can be powerful if you believe it. And we've a lot of us, like you and I, have been down this road where we didn't know who we were, you know, and we had to hurdle obstacles, especially the ones within us that we were putting before our own selves. These self-defeating mechanisms that were implanted in us over the generations, you know, to keep us from coming to terms and realizing the truth of who we really are. You know, so all you people out there who have yet to find out who, you know, you're Native American, you're a Turtle Islander, and you're trying to find your people, your community, you know, look at your family. That's your tribe. Your extended family as well. That's your tribe right there to start with, and nobody can tell you otherwise. And there is no law that can compel you to identify in any one specific way. They can't make a law against that.
yeah, I appreciate that, Alejandro. I wanted to add another point, like for my Italian friends out there that are watching. I'm well aware that there's like different, there's Italians of different skin complexion. It's interesting how, like in the south, the southern part, like people are darker. But yeah, like you said, Alejandro, it's just him like spreading his, you know, biased views. You know, Michael Knowles. He has that type of personality where he's a good like debater, right? But the things that he said just, yeah, weren't accurate, and it wasn't checked. Obviously, the people that were there like pretty much supported him, no matter how stupid he looked in parts of the video. But yeah, so we should move on to the final part. That is, unless you had anything else to add.
Yeah, I did want to say one thing too. What he did was very disrespectful to the real Latino people, the descendants of the Roman people who speak the Latin language, the Italian people. And I think a lot of our people who are brown and who are in fact Native American, who are going around calling themselves Latino, you are, what's the word when you're stealing an identity? You are appropriating somebody else's, another culture's identity. You're appropriating the Italian people's ancestral heritage from the Roman Empire. You're stealing. You don't even speak Italian. You don't speak the Latin language. Stop calling yourselves Latino. You're not from Italy. Unless you have Italian roots and that you want to embrace them, go to Italy and see how they receive you. Just the same thing as our people who want to call, and where what September is supposed to be Hispanic Heritage Month. Those of you who call yourself Hispanic, you are usurping and appropriating the Hispanic culture from the Iberian Peninsula. If you are not from Spain, stop calling yourselves Hispanic. You know, get your head together. You know, reclaim your true ancestral roots. You were given a Hispanic name and surname when you were baptized, when your ancestors were baptized, forcefully or through torture, or they did it voluntarily as a means of survival. And some just did it voluntarily because they were easily brainwashed and taken down, you know, with the new religion. But yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to ask, you know, I met someone who was of Southern Mexican descent, and I think he identified like ethnically as Latino, but racially or through his eyes of who he was, not through the ethnicity, but like he saw himself as indigenous, as native, right? Do you believe in your eyes, can someone do that? Or do you think that they should just say they're native completely? Or is it a step in the right direction if they ethnically see themselves as Latino, right? But they know that they're native? Like,
you know, if they want to embrace that, that's fine. But in the larger picture, to avoid confusion, when
Sure.
when you want to reclaim your ancestral identity from this continent, if you call yourself anything else, it's going to be used against you. So, I mean, this is all about strategy. It's about calling yourself Native American. It's an incorrect term, but we use it for strategical purposes, you know, and it's only a temporary strategy until we win this information war that is being, you know, waged upon us. It's a mental and spiritual warfare. We have to win the war. Are you going to go? I mean, and you have to pack your ammunition. You have to pack the proper ammunition. And when you aim, you're going to fire and aim again and fire again. You know, this is all about strategy and planning how you're going to do this. Because if you say, oh, well, I'm mixed blood, then it's going to be used against you. Oh, well, then you're not Native American. You're not who your ancestors were. Oh, well, I identify as Hispanic, but racially it's like, oh, well, then you're not really Native American. Look at you. Your culture's been erased. Your people don't even exist anymore. You guys are a whole new breed. You're a mixed race. Anything can be used against you. We know this because we've been hit with everything. And from our own people, oh, but Native American is wrong because Amerigo Vespucci in America. I was like, we don't care. This is a strategy. Quit trying to play mental gymnastics with us or like show off your prowess of how correct you can be. Oh, I'm indigenous. Well, indigenous means a slave. We've shared this like the screenshot from Black's Law Dictionary from indigena means subject to the crown, a slave. So stop using indigenous, because on the same token, anybody can be indigenous from anywhere, from somewhere around the world. Everybody's indigenous to one part of the world or the other. If you use it in the modern sense, that original to one part of the world. You know, well, I'm indigenous. Okay, from where? Now you have to go on longer and explain who you are. And you start losing people's attention instead of saying, my name is so-and-so, I'm Native American. Right there in 3 seconds, you said who you are and where you're from. That's it. That's all you need to do. And you've established that. And the point is not to leave any room for debate. This is not a debate. This is not about having debates. This is about standing your ground, saying who you are, and and knowing who your land is. So the point is, when people begin to awaken to their true identity, we've seen the process. It's happened to me. It's happened to so many people that we've like walked with along the way through this process. Once they realize they're Native American, then they start looking into the history and say, wait a minute, well, that means I'm from here. Okay, oh, wait a minute. Well, then that means white people are from Europe. You know, the African Americans they're from Africa. Asians are from Asia. Like, I'm from here. This is my land. I was doing some reading. Oh, wait a minute. Well, Europeans came and took this land, and they start reading more, and they read about and how it was done. And then they realize, well, like, I want my land back. That's what it leads up to, where people begin to unite and saying, you know what? We got to fight for our land. We got to take our land back. This is a major injustice. This is a crime against humanity perpetrated on us. But because it happened several centuries ago, people are trying to wipe it off the books like it never happened, or they don't want to talk about it. They ignore it. They sweep it off to one side, and they railroad the people's, they railroad them onto other subjects that don't mean anything. And we get caught up in that too. We get caught up in their squabbles and their fights. So that's what the point is. It's for our liberation, for our freedom. And it's natural. Look at all the animals in the zoos. They wish that they weren't in captivity, And that's another thing they try to use. If a tiger is born in captivity, is it no longer a tiger? Just because you were born in captivity doesn't mean that you're no longer a Turtle Islander, that you're no longer Native American. Everybody's like, and I just want to share one line from a John Trudell poem where he says, I'm struggling, the elder said, you're struggling to learn. You're struggling to learn. You want to learn the old ways. And you're struggling to learn, but all you have to do is remember. because it's in there. It's in here and in there. It's in us. And that's it. All you have to do is remember who you really are. They couldn't take it out of you.
Yeah. I was thinking earlier when I was trying to be like Latino Marcus, I was wondering like if I wasn't adopted, you would be arguing against the Latino market. Because I grew up, I was born in Lima. So, the society's, their life there's quite urbanized in Lima. So, anyway, I think one last example I wanted to give of proof of that is, everyone knows who the Chinese are, right? Let's say like I adopted a kid from China, right? Let's say he's got like what? Trace amounts of Siberian, I don't know, Indian DNA. So he's not like fully Chinese, but obviously that's beside the point. What I'm saying is he's Chinese, right? And I adopt him and I take him to the US and I raise him as an American, right? And so his entire lifestyle is not Chinese whatsoever, right? But do people still look at him as Han Chinese? Yes. So what am I trying to compare here is that even though like, despite I'm trying to compare it in terms of like, even though we don't practice some like culture from a community, we're still like native. But
racially.
Yeah. Yeah. You get it? But of course, like people don't look at that way because they're taught to believe that like, oh, you're not practicing this culture. So I'm looking at you as a Latino, even though Latino is not like a racial marker, right? But Chinese is in their eyes. They're not going to argue about that. They won't have second thoughts. They'll be like, oh, just like an Asian guy, right? They're Han Chinese and that's it. But for us, it's quite different. It's like they want us to jump through hoops.
Yeah, because they're not occupying, Europeans are not occupying Chinese land. They're occupying our land. They've been illegally occupying our land as uninvited people. They're not guests, they're uninvited. They never were invited here. They just barged in. And I mean, of course, and that's why they're doing what they're doing. To keep millions of brown Native American people from reclaiming their identity, because that's going to lead to land reclamation, to fighting for the land and looking for ways to get the land back into our hands.
Yeah, I was even referring to
that's where we're at. That's where we're at. That's our reality. Most people are already living in the European illusion, and they don't want to see that. And they maybe they never will. I mean, how will you search for the light if you don't even know you're living in darkness? That's what Bruce Lee said once. Many of them will never come to that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in the end, though, it's not even just from European or like white Americans. I've experienced it like from Black Americans too, and even other so-called Hispanics as well, especially the Black. Particular African Americans from these Aboriginal channels, right? Like they say some like white supremacist crap. I don't know if you ever heard of any of them, but it's pretty crazy. I said I wouldn't get into it too much, but yeah, it's just defying odds, right? And following like what you believe in, despite like what non-native people would say,
Yeah, I mean, I think they're being manipulated, They never used to think that. Where did they get that from? Who funded these professors to write these books and articles and manipulate all these people into thinking that they're actually from here? Same thing. Why are Europeans the ones who are pushing the Bering Strait theory? It's still a theory. It hasn't been proven, because they've always been trying to label the Piali Ichni. I just saw your comment, Ichni Jocelyn. I am an Ineyo Esquella woman on Mikinak, Turtle Island.
Well,
She's
think
from
that,
up north. But you know, if we stand back and see the big picture, we will see that everything is being used against us. You know, to level the playing field, where they can say we're all human beings. That's another trap. We're all human beings. We're all immigrants here. We're all, you know, what are the other ones? We're all immigrants. We're all human beings. Those are part of the traps that they use to level the playing field, to justify their continued presence here, their existence on our lands.
I think even if, you know, a lot of people, you know, disagree or agree with like the Bering Strait theory, even if that is, you know, that is really true, it happened, that was like, what, 15,000, 20,000, thousands of years ago, right? So what I would argue with that, when people say, oh, you guys are Asians, right? We're like, well, we all came from Africa, right? So why do we use the word white? You know, we're all black then, we're all African. People evolve over time and they develop distinct physical characteristics. You know, people from the Americas really don't look anything like those from China or Japan, right? Because that's what they're referring to. That's what these people refer to when they say you're Asian, is that they're in their minds, they're thinking of Japanese, Chinese, Korean people, or even Thai. But now I will say that I did get mistaken a couple times as a Thai person or a Chinese when I spent time in Asia. But overall, the point that I'm trying to make is that like natives do look different, like way different than East Asians do. And you can tell, obviously, like there's facial structure, height, many other things I could talk about. But I appreciate the comment. Good convo. Let's see a collab with the Red Nation channel. I'll have to. I think I've heard of them. I've meant to watch one of their videos. But
yeah, I mean, since it's still, you know, speaking scientifically or whatever, it's still a theory. Nobody has any concrete proof about those so-called migrations, when in fact the majority of the migrations came from the south. You know, nobody wants to talk about that. Nobody wants to talk about where, you know, on social media I've met people all the way from like up in what are they called? There's a suffix in their name from the Aymara language of Bolivia. And I ran that with I think the fox and the salk, their original names have that same suffix. And this guy that I met from, it's over like up in like the Delaware area maybe, or up north of New York in that area, the Pequot, I think. And he said, we speak an old version of the Aymara language from Bolivia. He's like, we know where we come from. This guy from Mexico who was working in Oklahoma, he thought he was working with a bunch of Mexicans but he flipped out when they could only speak English. He's like, I found out they're Indians, man. I thought they were Mexican. I was like, because Mexicans are actually Indian too. They're Native American. And he asked one of the guys, he told me, he's like, dude, I asked one of the guys where they're from. Or he asked me, he's like, oh, are you Indian? He's all, yeah, that's why I have long hair. I'm Native American. You know, he's all, yeah, I'm Indian too. Where are you from? He's like, from Tenochtitlan, Mexico City. And he said, oh, he's all, we come from South America. And this was one of the tribes in Oklahoma who told him that. This could all be called hearsay, whatever. Why would I make that up? But it was very interesting when you get things that don't have to be in black and white or written in the book, you know. But the guy said, oh, long ago we came from South America. We came all the way up here, you know. And God, I'll send you the names, the suffix that those three nations used: the fox and the salk near the Great Lakes, and then the Pequot their original name has that same, I think it's Waka. So I ran it across my friend who has Aymara classes online, and he says, "Oh yeah, that's a form of an Aymara word, which means it could mean three things: land, people, or nation." I said, "Oh, that's interesting. It's starting to make sense." On Facebook, I met a guy from Alaska who said that they came from South America, or they had to go to South America, because of the Ice Age. And they said, we even have a word for the animal monkey in our language. He's but we came back home. He said, when the ice caps retreated. He said, and we still sing songs and tell stories of those times.
Oh.
And I have an edition of Arqueología Mexicana, Mexican Archaeology magazine. Well, I have the citation, the volume number, the year, and the edition, where they talked about new studies are showing that the so-called Olmec or Olmeca migrated from the area now, which is now Venezuela, thousands and thousands of years ago. And they're still there.
It's crazy.
Yeah, but their name was never Olmeca. That was an academic who used a Nahuatl name for them.
I think someone asked if we were, I don't know if they're referring to me or you as anti-evolution. But I would say, like, I do believe in evolution. Oh, did you say what is evolution?
Yeah, it's like everything changes. Nothing stays the same. I don't know.
I mean, I do, but it kind of conflates with my thoughts on religion too. And I don't really want to talk about my religious views right now. So I'll talk about that another time.
We don't even have to talk about religion. All we have to talk about is, our ancestral stories, our creation stories.
That's right.
We never had evolution in our stories, that I know of. I mean, who gave us that concept of evolution? Who gave us all these theories? That's the thing, is like, we don't question where these things come from. We don't question who's been giving us this information and why they're giving it to us. In whose best interest is it for us not to know our ancestral history, our original stories, our creation stories, our languages, the sacred spaces or sacred geological sites on the land? Because it's all geared at keeping us in a point of submission, in captivity. It's just that you can't see the bar. Many of the people can't see the bars that bind them and the chains that hold them back. And that's for a lot of humanity now. There's a lot of white people on YouTube and on social media across. They're recognizing that they're not free anymore like they thought they were. Well, that's what brown and black people across the world were going through over the past 500 to 1,000 years, depending on where you're, how far back you want to go and where.
Yeah, that's interesting that you brought up the native theories on I guess define evolution, right? And how a lot of people believe that we originated here in the Americas from somewhere instead. But I think I really wanted to cover the last part.
Yeah, let's not go off on a tangent. All right.
Yeah. So, and that was where are we at here? A current event of the night. Migration, right? Currently, right now, we are seeing a lot of buses from Florida and Texas being sent over to Washington D.C., my home state, in Chicago, New York City, and just thousands of migrants from the Americas being sent over there. So it's kind of came to my conclusion that no matter what political identity these people select in government, it's kind of like birds of the feather flock together. Is that what they say?
Yeah.
So I think it's clear that both don't really support, the causes going on. Well, I know you wanted to talk a little bit about that too, Alejandro.
Yeah, go for it.
Oh no, I was asking you, like in terms of like the administration, right? Like regardless of if it's the Biden administration, the Trump administration, or other administration, they aren't in when it comes to the end of it all, they really don't support the issue going on, which is the crisis, at the border, and like what's like the best solution, right? I think having like a good like organized immigration system would really help, but it doesn't appear that the current administration is really working on that too much. That's what I see from my eyes, right? So obviously with the previous administration under Trump, things were a little bit out of control too, but now it seems that it's gotten quite crazy, like what's going to come from all these buses being sent from the border to New York, right? Are they just going to keep on taking more and more? Like something's going to happen, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Because, even though these governors in these states up north really preach about like openness and whatnot of these, people from, in their eyes, these impoverished areas, they maybe on the other hand, they don't want them there because they're, complaining right now about these buses being sent up to their cities. So, and you're from Texas, right? So, I don't know. Well, you're not from Southern Texas, so I guess maybe you haven't been to the border and seen like what goes down. Yeah. Also, there's like a lot of human trafficking. Yeah, it's really sad, especially like in Mexico and whatnot, like with the drug cartels and everything. And how many humans are like sent over and how many are like abused, whether that's like through sexual abuse or other murder.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a huge problem, and you would think that like the Mexican government would do more on that side too, but there's so much corruption. So,
Well, I guess remember this began the moment they created borders. So once they marked their lines on our land and began to call any land within those lines a specific, a country of one name or another, anyone outside those lines were deemed illegal aliens or foreigners or immigrants, So, I mean, the situation our people are in is, let's see. I guess we have to go back to. I mean, it all goes to Christopher Columbus. First, he began human trafficking, sexual trafficking, or what was it? He began the sex trade, the sex slave trade here on our homeland, and from there, when countries began to be formed, I mean, human trafficking began when Columbus arrived. When the United States began to invade all these countries through secret warfare and fake revolutions, causing uprisings throughout Mexico, Central America, and South America, I would like everyone to check out, what they did in Guatemala during the 1950s, and how they completely went in and further destroyed a country. And same thing in Colombia, same thing in Chile, in Ecuador. There's a really good 20-minute video called Confessions of an Economic Hitman. This man who's a banker, ex-banker, and he was sent by the large banks to make these countries like lucrative offers. Look, we'll install power plants and shipyards. We'll build your docks and railroads, but you got to give us mineral rights. You got to give us this, that. You got to give us control of these utilities. and they would say no. It was like, this is ours and we don't need any help. And so they said there were three steps in the process to taking them over. One of them was bribing them. If that didn't work, then they went to they used civil war, creating uprisings in their country. And if that didn't work, then it was assassination, and many of these people were killed. So look up Confessions of an Economic Hitman. So when Americans refer to third world countries, I mean, they're poverty stricken and they're third world because they were made third world. You know, the people are heavily enslaved, and, you know, and it's funding European countries for the most part. It's not funding their people or their country that they live in, unless it's a puppet, you know, installed by a European country or the United States. So you have people wanting to come up here where they know that there's going to be money for, you know, looking to seek better economic opportunities. And that's why they're coming here, whether it's by design or just the blowback, as they call it, or the result of destroying their countries and their ability to make a livelihood. You know, all that disruption is causing these waves of native people. The majority of them are native, and they're making their way up here. You know, so now, you know, we have Native Americans, we have Turtle Islanders being called illegal immigrants on their continent. We have them being called foreigners. We have them called invaders. What else? Immigrants, migrants. When they're native to this they're the original people of this continent. You know, like you and I and a lot of our viewers.
Brings me to a good point. I'm going to transform into American Miguel one more time.
Okay? All right.
Let's say, all right, you got me on your side. Like, you know, you've convinced me. I see myself as native. You know, I'm living in the U.S. Okay, and I want to spread this like our other, you know, brothers and sisters in the country. I want to try to persuade them to open their minds up. But now with the immigration crisis, let's say we have like a difference of opinions. I see like illegal immigrants coming in, and yes, I see them as native, but at the same time, like my tax dollars have to go to the taking care of like illegal immigrants too, right? But I want to support them, but I don't think it's fair that I have to contribute through taxes, and it seems like it's never going to end. Do you get where I'm trying to like come from, or point that I'm trying to make is like, why should I support this as well?
Is it really going to hurt you economically? Maybe in some parts. I mean, I work in construction, and I work with people from Mexico and Central America on a regular basis, you know, and I know why they're here, you know, and I have a lot of friends who said that Monsanto destroyed them and their parents' livelihood. They used to grow corn, and then Monsanto introduced their genetic hybrid corn, and they said we couldn't save seeds. You had to keep buying seeds. So you had to keep buying from Monsanto. They destroyed my parents' abilities to be economically independent by growing corn and selling it, milling it, anything. I met a lot of guys like that, you know. So I mean, those are the factors that lead to people coming up here. Their livelihoods are completely destroyed or disrupted, you know, mostly by the United States. You know, they've been terrorizing Mexico since who knows when, you know. And anyways,
yeah, just
I mean, what can, you know, how are you going to tell the original people of this continent they can't be here? I mean, yeah, it might affect you economically at one point or another, depending on you know, what your job is, you know,
or resources being allocated.
Yeah, but I mean, do you feel that pinch yet? Are you suffering? You know, do you feel economic losses because of that, or can you pinpoint them to that specifically? Or is it that you're following into the fear that they're pumping Americans with, you know, because they're the ones that are originally scared. Of course, they're going to see this as a threat, because they're not about to lose their grip on our land and resources. You know, they're still making they're extremely wealthy off of that, you know. And I've shared this on several shows, but there's this elder from South Texas who told me that this one white man wanted to ask him for a favor to connect him with a bunch of elders for a thesis he was working on up in Oklahoma. He's like, yeah, you know, I want to write my book on, my thesis is going to be on the Native American church and the peyote trade or the peyote use. And I know you know a lot of the people over there. So he's like, I mean, he seemed like an all right guy, but I was going to see where he's coming from. So he said, hey, so-and-so, let me ask you something. There's what do white people tell their children in order to be successful? And the guy thought about it for a while, and he said, you know what? We don't. We just hand it over to them. So he admitted, he's all, I'm glad you're honest. You know, so the guy admitted that we just hand over what we have. The stolen property, what else? Stolen land, stolen resources, the economy that they built off of that. That's where they lay claim to, and that's what they stand to lose.
Yeah.
So we're all going to feel something if enough of our Southern relatives keep coming here in droves or waves. But yes, they're also being funded. They're being manipulated by other political forces here and abroad to cause disruptions to this country, whatever it is. You know, that's a fact of the reality. They're trying to use that they're weaponizing them. You know, so that's why a lot of Americans, like white Americans, see that as a threat. You know,
do you think the U.S. government has a hand in like the disruption in the problems in the drug cartels and human trafficking? Would you say?
Yes, I think so. I think they're a part and parcel to it too. I mean, they weaponized the cartels. They trained some of these guys over at the School of the Americas in Georgia, who are ex-Mexican military. You know, they were trained over there on like very brutal tactics with a lot of the so-called banana republic dictators, the puppet dictators installed by the United States, were all trained at the School of the Americas. People need to look it up. You know, look up School of the Americas and see all the world leaders or military generals, you know, from different countries around the world that were trained there to use brutal torture tactics, you know, to instill fear in their people and their so-called, you know, and somebody said they were trained in Colombia too. I'd like to learn more about that. But anyway, I guess the point is that yes, they weaponized these cartels and they made them who they are now, you know, and these people, they took over the movement and began to profit off of the movement of cocaine and other drugs from Colombia that had to go through Mexico. There's another part, like, I have a friend from South Texas who told me she used to work at a bar on the border on the Texas side. And she says, I remember I worked there and they would hire these waitresses for the bar that were fresh from Mexico, you know, who crossed the river illegally, you know, according to, you know, what most people consider would be illegal, you know. And these women were, you know, they were used as waitresses in these restaurants or these bars, and that bar in particular where she worked, and they were paid. They were paid to pay off their debt for being crossed over, but then they were used and taken further into the country as prostitutes, and they were drugged up in prostitutes. And my friend said many of these women ended up in mobile homes in the middle of the Nevada or Utah or Arizona deserts after they were used up and wasted, and they just became cheap prostitutes for truck drivers who knew about these mobile homes that were like miniature brothels.
Wow, that's sad.
Hey, there's no news reporting on that I know of, but this could be misconstrued as hearsay. Anybody could like blow me off. Oh yeah, whatever. But why would I make that up? Why would my friend make that up? Mm-hmm. She saw what happened to these women, how they were seduced into the sex trade sex slaves. You know, so a lot of people out there who are like all pro prostitute or pro sex workers, as they call them, a lot of them are not there because they want to. You know, a lot of them have been enslaved, and they're, what do they call them? Not their pimps, but they're like their handlers. Keep a good eye on them, and they're trafficked all over the country and flown from one city to another. Marketed, hey, I got this great girl, man. She does this really good. You're gonna love her. Once they get used up, they end up in cheap brothels in mobile homes in the middle of the desert for truck drivers.
Yeah, it's really disturbing. You know, what's kept from the American public,
Yeah,
or what's not
and
really disclosed too much.
yeah, and Kat Terrell just said it's nationwide, it's continent-wide. My friends in Peru and in Bolivia, other friends in Central America, and in Mexico, Tlaxcala is one of the worst places for human trafficking. Yeah, I mean, I'm telling you, this is what Columbus started, and it hasn't stopped. It just got big.
Makes you wonder what else is like hidden. You know,
Man,
swept under the rug.
it's backwards. Everything is backwards compared. If anybody has an inkling of any of our ancestral knowledge or ways of being and living, you will know that what surrounds us now, the reality that surrounds us, is 180 degrees the opposite of how we used to live or how our ancestors lived. We have become the colonizer. We live like them, we talk like them, we eat like them, we act like them, we react like them. We've been domesticated where we're just a bunch of crybabies now compared to our ancestors. You know, we're weak. We've been weakened. You know, but we're not victims, and I think that's the point, is not to see ourselves as victims. We're still here, we're still alive,
Yeah,
and
man.
other.
That's what I agree with. You know, that's one of the main things that you and I like agree with, is just like how I don't want to see myself as like a victim, right? Like I don't want to see myself as an oppressed person, because that's like a huge like mental dysfunction that you've just like put inside your mind and decided to live with. That's not how you'll progress in society.
Right.
It's just not good for you mentally, in my opinion.
Yeah. We've been victimized, but we don't have to be victims. We've been oppressed, but we don't have to be oppressed, you know. And I always love the line from the Geronimo movie with the one with Wes Studi, where he said, but in our hearts we never surrendered. And we didn't. And we never surrendered. I mean, obviously, if we're having this show, if you're having this platform, and we have the viewers chiming in and leaving positive messages, they're living proof that we didn't surrender. They didn't surrender. And I want to give a shout out. I just saw a comment from my brother, Be Wise Like the Eagle. Hermano, Ikni, how are you? Good to see you again, man, or read from you. Okay.
Yeah, it's great to have your friends in here and everyone else in here too. It's had a good viewer count. But I think we want to go over some graphics really quick.
Oh yeah, about the immigration. Yeah.
Yeah, the immigration. Let me find it here. Okay, not that one.
That's you behind the scenes, right? He's like typing up the outline for the next show.
Yeah. Yeah, it's me. This one here, I hope people can see it somewhat well.
Okay. Now this is a small chart where we can see a number of U.S. military interventions and how they overthrew countries. And we have to remember, these are all European countries or European colonies where they cut up the land and divided her. You know, it's like their spoils of the mass genocidal warfare that Christopher Columbus, the genocidal maniac, began. You know, and then it was the Pilgrims, then it was also the French and the Germans and all the other Europeans that set foot here. Anyways, if you can look into this chart, take a screenshot, look it up. There's a lot of videos on YouTube. You know, you'll find several videos for each country. and you will see what Europeans are continuing to do throughout the Western Hemisphere, throughout our continent. And all of this is being done to maintain a grip on resources and land and the control of people. Take a screenshot.
Yeah, it's pretty sad, like what's the ongoing like neo-colonization, you could say.
Yeah. And a lot of
And-
fake revolutions that have our people following, like with what's his name? Like for instance, they say Che Guevara's good, but he did say a lot of anti-African, make a lot of racist statements about Africans. He made a lot of derogatory statements about Mexicans. A friend of mine from Bolivia, what is his name? I downloaded the PDF, but he wrote a small booklet for free that people were able to download a few years ago called Che Guevara, the Assassin of the Aymara People. That's something people need to look into, because I see a lot of hip people out there wearing Che Guevara shirts, and he's not who people think he is. Maybe he had a change of heart, maybe not, but if he was responsible for the assassination of Aymara people. Castro, another one. These are what people, these are crypto Jews. They're not Hispanic, they're not Latino or Native or anything, but we get confused with the whole Hispanic name and surname, and we want to think that they're one of us or we're one of them. So a lot of fake revolutions out there that people need to keep an eye out for, and a lot of good ones, but the good ones are the ones that were probably taken out. Not all of them though, because you have the Purepecha people over in Cherán, Michoacán, who are still holding on to their land and return to their original governance. They ran off the cartels and all the corrupt politicians and put their people in charge. So, all right. This is a screenshot too. This is from, look up this video. If AJ Plus, you said it was Al Jazeera?
I think it's Al Jazeera.
Yeah.
I could be wrong, but if not, I'll leave a comment for the video once this is over, and I can yeah.
So this comes from a post on Facebook. These images, Barrio of the Dreamers, who were deported over well, actually I don't know what city this is. I don't recognize this city, but if you want to go to another image.
Oh yeah, sure.
I want to go to the one with that lady on there. There we go. Go back to the first one. Not before this, not that one. There's one with a lady, a white lady, a professor. There she is. Okay. This right here is a study, and you can look up this lady. At the bottom, you'll see her name is Tanya Maria Golash Boza, University of California, Merced. She was talking about how Obama created the Dream Act, okay? And this reminds me of he created a trap, and it was Donald Trump who sprung the trap also. So Obama said it, many people hailed him as a hero, but what Obama did was create a registry of people who were here so-called illegally, who were the children of migrants who grew up here in the United States and were brought here at a young age and learned to speak English. And many of them were bilingual for the most part. So these people were eventually deported, and let's see. If you read this, take a screenshot. They were used to staff call centers in Mexico and Central America because they were bilingual, newly deported to their country of origin. And this is when all these telemarketing call centers moved shop over to these countries where they were earning less than $100 a week, as opposed to earning up to almost $20 a week here in the United States. So obviously this was planned. Trump also sprung the trap, and I remember working with my friends from Mexico, and I was like, "Are you guys thinking of signing up for that Dream Act or whatever, and they said no way, because then they're gonna know where we live. I said exactly. Don't do it, guys, because it's a benefit, and the government can take a benefit at any given moment when they want to, and they did. So take a screenshot of this, look up this lady. She has a lot of very good videos where she speaks about this on YouTube. I just looked her up, and you can see that global, it's called Unauthorized Immigrants, Global Capitalism and the Potential of Deferred Action. There's another one called Mass Deportation, Disposable Labor, and Global Capitalism. There's another one called Punishment Beyond the Deportee. So look her up, and give it a, and now go to the other screen. I mean, the other image.
Not this one.
No, not that one. Yeah, deported to Mexico, a lost generation. And it talks about right here, we can read at least 500,000 young people whose Mexican parents crossed the border into the United States have been forced back across the border, often knowing nothing of their new home. And this talks about their struggles. So next image, please, Marcus.
Yeah, this one.
Okay, how the American Empire exploits Latin America. And you can look this up as well. I found some videos on YouTube about how these people were used, because now we have a bilingual force who was deported, ready for us to open up shop in Mexico. We can pay them, what was it, 60 pesos an hour, which is like, what, $3? Where in the United States, they're getting paid up to $21 an hour, work from home. So it says here, Office of Foreign Asset Control, Division of the U.S. Treasury Department, tasked with enforcing economic and trade sanctions based on U.S. foreign policy and national security, restrict transactions with individuals, entities, and countries. So they needed a workforce, and that's why these deportations begin to happen, and there was a lot of money involved in it, of course. So who lobbied for it? President Obama was also known as the deporter-in-chief. He deported more people, or illegally, it's called Indian removal, Indian removal, more than any other president in the history of the United States. He created he built the cages and used them. And then Trump supposedly used them too. And now we don't know if that's true or not. Maybe, I'm sure he did, but nobody wants to talk about Barack Obama, who's not from here, building these cages. Where did all these children end up too, that were taken from their parents, the family separation? Where did all these children, they were all trafficked probably. Where are they now? Where are all these people? Where did they end up? Were they sent back? Were they spread across the United States among various detention center concentration camps? Where did they go?
I will say it is quite odd how the children in the camps and in these cages were very much highlighted during the Trump administration. And what you say is true, that the Obama administration did in fact deport more people, right? And if he was he was in charge of the cages himself, then why weren't these images and videos put up for the world to see, for the American public to see during his time, Obama's time? I mean,
of course not. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
there must be some kind of strife going on within these their political system. People fighting for power and using the media against each other, or using whatever means necessary to attack the other. But of course not. Nobody mentioned that during Obama's presidency. Nobody's talking about it during Biden's. Anybody can go on YouTube and look up Biden racist against Mexican, Biden anti-Mexican. You'll see when he was a little bit more mentally coherent in the 90s, where he spoke against Mexican entry into this country. He hated Mexicans. Nobody wants to talk about that. Nobody wants to talk about their open arms policy about letting our southern relatives come in, or other people come in from other countries here, but then they just dump them off somewhere. They don't want to have anything to do with them. You know, you have these Republican governors and sending them off by the busload, you know, into other communities where they're just whisked away and taken out immediately.
Sad situation. I think more people are opening up to, or should I say, waking up to what would happen in the past. But I think this was the last image here you wanted to go over.
That one, I really don't know much about that one. I don't think it really has to do with the original post. Sure. It was there, but I don't see it's like, you know.
Yeah. So yeah, that's pretty much what we wanted to cover tonight, I think. I think I wanted to share with the guests really quick when I was Michael Knowles was referring to Columbus being told that revered as a good person by the Spaniards, but this book here says otherwise. It's called the Columbus and the Four Voyages, written by Lawrence Bergreen, and here it talks about his voyages and his journals in great detail, as well as journals from his friends, I should say, the Spanish that were with him, and he did do some pretty terrible things, and he normalized like slave trading and whatnot. So yeah, it was pretty bad. So this book here, I think, pretty much puts Knowles' points about Columbus to shame. I read it. It was some parts were like really sad to read, but it does give you a lot of knowledge of his past and what went on.
Can you hold that up again?
Sure.
Columbus, the Four Voyages. Wow, that looks good. There's a really good book out there that I read, I borrowed, and I wish I would have bought my own copy, and I still need to get it. But it's called Columbus and Other Cannibals by Jack Forbes, who's Lenni Lenape, native from up north. Columbus and Other Cannibals. That's a really good book. It's very good. It's a very good expose on the brutality and the savagery of that began with Christopher Columbus. And another one too. I finally found a hardcover version here, but it's called "Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee."
Okay.
This book is a chapter by chapter. I'll show you the index here, the table of contents. Anybody who doubts, or if anybody wants to believe Michael Knowles and his little epithet of historical fiction, the majority of this book is based off of military and congressional records, and also apart from some oral history. But author D. Brown, if you look in the bibliography, it's full of information that he took from congressional hearings, the congressional record, military letters, military communication. And it describes in detail the theft, murder, rape, ransacking of people and resources when the colonizers arrived or invaded what is now called the territorial geographical United States of America. Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee. Very, very good. I already read this like 4 times over the past almost 20 years, maybe. No, 15.
Yeah. Can you bring that book up one more time? I want to
Sure.
solo layout. Okay, yeah. Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee. And
by
that's
D.
written
Brown.
by D. Brown. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. And here's another one I recommend. Hold on. Before I get into that one, I just want to show really quick a very good one too. It talks more about the atrocities created, committed by Europeans. Eating Fire, Tasting Blood, an anthology of the American Indian Holocaust. Very, very good book. There's a very good chapter. I think it's the first chapter of this book. Or it's the second one. It's called The Savage in the Mirror. And I like to equate that, the savage in the mirror, with what I think it was John Trudell, what he said. He said something to the lines that they had to kill us because our very existence showed them who they were and who they weren't. You know, so this chapter, The Savage in the Mirror, we were a reflection of the atrocious nature of the Europeans and how they were with us when they arrived, when they invaded. They had to kill us off, or put us off somewhere on a reservation, or put our people away somewhere, or eradicate them completely in one form or another. So they didn't have that reminder, that telling reminder of who they are and how they behaved historically. So that's a good one right there. Eating Fire, Tasting Blood.
I can try and do that one more
It's a
time.
compilation of different authors. So each chapter is a different author. So what would you call a book? An anthology. And it's written right there, an anthology. Sorry, I'm not an academic. But this was compiled by Mary Jo Moore. And I dedicated this book to my friend Renato in Peru. And this was from 2017, and I still haven't mailed it to him, but I will one day.
Very cool.
So,
Wow. Oops.
by calling us savage, first, indios, by the Spaniards, it comes from sin Dios, or without God. They had to justify the murder of our people because we were being called godless heathens. Sin Dios, where indios comes from. They had to criminalize us in one way or another. Then we became savages. Then we became hostiles. Then we became, what else? Enemy combatants in one form or another, using more recent terminology. They couldn't do what their ancestors did because more people would find that, abhorrent. So we got to categorize them now. We got to start separating these people. We got to use blood quantum as a weapon, or create blood quantum, and that's a weapon. We have to use the mixed blood as a weapon. We have to use mestizo and Métis as a weapon. We have to start categorizing these other ones as Latino and Hispanic, anything but Native American or American Indian. And so they had to create a criminal class, and this takes me to this book, Inventing the Savage.
Let me zoom in real quick. How do I do that? Okay, right here. Sorry, earlier I had accidentally kicked you out for like a few seconds.
Oh, okay. So it's by Luana Ross, who wrote Inventing the Savage, The Social Construction of Native American Criminality.
Wow.
So that's another weaponization of their laws, their economic inductions to keep a people down and oppressed and from ever wanting to reclaim their land and resources.
You really learned a lot. All those books behind you.
I haven't read them all. You should see the faces they make when I buy new books. And I haven't even read all of them yet. They get jealous.
Yeah. I'm in the process of reading a couple books right now too.
But the knowledge isn't all there, You can use that black and white print, There is knowledge to be found everywhere, but, essentially, like, reclaiming your roots is returning to living with the land. That's where everything is at, that we need to know. Under the sky, on the land.
Yeah,
the natural
I agree.
world creation.
Learning from people, learning, I remember a long time ago. I don't know if you remember a guy named Lakota Guy. He had given me an extended, an offer to come and see him sometime and see like the community up there. So one day when I connect with him again, that's something I wouldn't mind doing, actually, because I've never been on a reservation before.
Yeah, think of it as a family reunion, like, hey, long lost relatives, I haven't talked in a while,
Yeah. I think I saw someone leave. It was Thomas. He left a comment about a community. What's the panel's take on the Cherokee Nation planning on opening up a large intake to take facility for undocumented immigrants, mostly for children? I didn't know that.
Wow, that's really good. I'd like to know more about that.
Yeah, I would
That's
too.
really good. You know, I knew some people up in the, was it Kenyankahaka, the so-called Mohawk, who were from a friend of mine who's part of that nation, looking to take in Southern relatives, you know, giving them asylum under their nations.
Yeah,
Oh, I like that comment. Can you put that one up from my friend
Sure.
Jocelyn?
Yeah.
Yeah. We've also been called heathens, pagans, demons, not human. Exactly. And it's still happening, but guess what? That is, what is it called? Self-projection. Self-projection. We already know who the real heathens and pagans and demons and the non-humans or inhumane non-humans are.
So this is the people that are calling us that. But you know, the crazy thing is just like so many of us have been brainwashed to like almost hate ourselves, right? So many people that, you know, call themselves like Hispanic and Latino, like even they will probably use the term, you know, don't be an Indio, right? So sorry.
Sorry, I was just asking for a glass of water.
Oh, you're good. No worries.
But no, exactly. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I know people ask if we're gonna drop the link, and maybe for like a few minutes we can drop it if that's okay with you. Someone wants to come on and say something.
Sure.
Really awesome. But yeah, a lot of propaganda has been spread, you know, throughout the history of Latin America's. It's been the existence of Latin culture and whatnot. So that's why I kind of understand what you said, Alejandro, when I had my question of can you be Latino ethnically but still see yourself as native? But it's important to look up the history of Latin culture and how since its inception.
Yeah, I would ask him, what does your heart say? Come on, get some courage. You know, or your ancestors are calling you. You wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them. We believe that our ancestors we know and feel that our ancestors have a big part in this. And we won't be able to do this without them, without their help, without their knowledge. Many of our rituals, our ceremonial rituals, have to do with resurrecting the ancestors and calling upon them, invoking their presence. You know, that's what a lot of it boils down to. You know, and a lot of them are also, you know, rituals of gratitude as well. But we can't do this without them, you know. So everyone, like, we got to remember who our ancestors are and thank them for lining things up for you to be here at this moment. A lot of people are probably laughing at that. They probably don't believe in that, but, you know, it's not about belief. It's about knowing. It's about feeling, you know, and trusting the voices that we feel, you know. Not all the voices, but I'm saying,
yeah.
You know.
So I guess a question for you would be like, did you say that, you know, the Brown Continent group, you guys plan on making some more content in the future, or?
I want to.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. People can go on Instagram and download the images, copy and paste all the text, use it. We've seen so many people using it in one form or another, or other organizations as well. Of course, we're not going to copyright that. You cannot copyright ideals or truths, you know, and people are using the language that we use because it leaves no room for debate. And people have to just have courage and stand up for themselves and use it, you know. You know, those are weapons for going to war. There's an information war being waged against all of us, of all humanity, You know, now all people, regardless of what their race or racial background is, a lot of them are feeling it. But everyone's so separate, they're afraid to talk about it with each other. You know, it's like
Yeah.
mental suppression, silent warfare against the mind and heart.
No, definitely, you're right.
But we want to come back eventually. We were selling a lot of shirts out there where people could wear their native pride on the outside, but it's a reflection of what we have inside, you know. And that keeps us working. That keeps us funding our operation and paying for the website. So we haven't been on that. I know we owe a few people some shirts, and something happened with the Shopify. It got disconnected, I think. So we just want to let you know that we're going to come back and we're going to catch up with some of those people that we owe something to. But the information is there. The website is out there, browncontinent.com. The Facebook page, I think, got locked. I don't know who has access to it or who's running it right now. But we have the website. We have the YouTube channel on here, Brown Continent, with the same logo as Instagram, so you'll recognize that. And there's a lot of resources there, a lot of articles. And if people would like to, I'll share the link with you. We created a depository of PDF articles and MP3 sound bites and stuff about the colonization of the earth, especially the Western Hemisphere. And we have a lot of documents in English and Spanish, and what happened to many of the native nations from Alaska to Patagonia. I'll share the link with you if you want to share it on, on the description of this video. We'll put it on there. But
Thanks for dropping the knowledge.
Yeah, it's on Mega. We call it WASICU Studies, and people can share. I mean, there's a lot of information on there. Share that link far and wide. Educate yourselves. Download the PDF articles. It's best if you do it from a PC or a laptop, because you don't have to download the app. You can do it on your phone, but then you're gonna have to download the Mega app. But there's a lot of ammunition there that anybody can use, to educate themselves and teach themselves about what really happened when the Europeans arrived. And it has a lot of information in there on their psychology, their behavior, their attitudes, their tendencies for violence and sexual violence. There's a lot of truth out there, I'm sure there's a lot of them out there that are not like that, but what we're sharing there is a lot of the truth, because we survived it and we have it recorded in a lot of our stories and history. So it's something so it doesn't get erased. If you want to share the link, I'll tell you what to put in the description so people can know exactly what it is that I'm talking about, and there's over 100 PDF documents, and there's some video resources there that people can download and share the videos far and wide that we used to have on YouTube or on other Facebook pages, but they were completely obliterated by Facebook, censored.
Yeah, Facebook will do that. Good old Zuckerberg.
Yeah.
But okay, so before we wrap up, if anyone had any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat here. But give that like a minute or two, and then maybe we can finish this off. If that sounds good to you, Alejandro.
Yeah. Did you want to invite anybody to talk, or was that going to be?
I'll drop the link again. If someone wants to chat for.
Oh, you already did. Oh, okay, and it's voluntary if they want to or not.
Yeah, it's voluntary. If they don't, then it's cool. I understand it's late. Thoughts on Namar? The Black Panther movie that's coming out.
What is that? What do you mean?
The second movie, Black Panther, has a Mayan Aztec culture in it. I guess there's a guy named Nimar that's native, and I assume he's going to come to the aid of the other protagonist in the movie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I haven't even seen any of the previews or anything like
Yeah.
that.
I mean,
I heard people commenting about that, like they don't like that. They think it's disrespectful, but I don't know yet, so I haven't seen it.
yeah. I think it's kind of good that they're spreading some knowledge, or hope that they're going to spread knowledge of indigenous cultures and whatnot.
You know, on the positive side of that, it will lead people to investigate their roots more or look deeper into some of these cultures. You know, some of our ancestral cultures. You know,
Yeah.
especially some people from Guatemala that are born here and like, oh, my parents are in Guatemala or from the Yucatan, and that's Mayan territory. Wow, this guy's Mayan or something. Like, oh, I want to learn more about that. Hey, mom and dad, are we Mayan? You know, it's gonna spark something off in somebody somewhere at one point or another. You know, so I mean, I'm not about knocking it all, completely without, how many people were wakened up to their identity by the movie Apocalypto,
Yeah,
it's like,
true. Godzilla asked if the indigenous community is anti-black. No, I haven't met anyone that's like that. Godzilla asked me another question. He asked if my kid is white passing, would I see him as native? I really don't like that term. It's just silly to me. So I'm assuming he refers to as like, if my kid is like somewhat lighter than me, of course I would still see him as native. I mean, he still looks like me in a way. Anyway, let's move on to the other questions here. Thomas had a question, I think, for you.
Has the guest ever been to any indigenous spiritual ceremony? I've been to many ceremonies in Mexico and throughout Texas. And my first encounter was with peyote ceremonies with Lakota people in Texas, and there were a lot of white people there. And it was a very interesting phenomenon. I mean, at first I used to think, wow, I'm great. I'm honored to be a part of these ceremonies. And then I reconnected with my roots from Central Mexico, and I began to go to those ceremonies, where it's a form of ceremony that was created as a means of survival by several groups in Central Mexico, the so-called Chichimeca, which were, and the so-called Otomi or Ñañu, and mostly having to do with there's nocturnal rituals where we invoke the presence of our ancestors, and then that's the feminine aspect, and then the masculine aspect is commemorated through dancing under the sun, which is a masculine essence. So we're honoring life in one form or another through the invocation of our ancestors. But I quit going to those peyote ceremonies because I couldn't connect to those. I didn't know what they were about exactly. A lot of them were through Native American church chapters. And then through an elder, I was reconnected back to the peyote ceremonies through my Coahuilteca or Yuacuapila ancestry, where we now conduct our own ceremonies according to there's a 2,000-year-old painting or mural out where the Pecos River empties into the Rio Grande, and from there we receive our instructions on the formations we take during a ceremony and how they're conducted, and also through historical records written down by Spaniards the colonizers who came here throughout northeastern Mexico and southern and central Texas. So now we don't have to be part of the Native American church, which was another strategy created originally to preserve that ceremony. So now we know it's originally from South Texas and northeastern Mexico. But now that it's practiced throughout geographically outside of that geographical zone, these people are now conducting a ceremony under different skies, in different lands, you know, and the ceremony has everything to do with the geography and the sky specifically over that region, you know, on very specific dates.
I'm jealous of you, Alejandro. Got to go to all these.
I didn't expect this, you know. I don't know. I'm telling you, we have to trust in our ancestors. Or certain things line up, and everyone has the capability to do that. And you know, it's just how much you feel in your heart that you want to connect, and you know, you have to cut through a lot of layers. You know, there's a lot of charlatans out there. There's a lot of people writing books, doing seminars, public speaking, writing books, anything, you know, making money, you know, for that, you know. And I had to hurdle those obstacles. You know, I bought a lot of stuff out there, especially in Mexico, books, and sifting through a lot of generic or, you know, information, and people end up believing it, you know. It's just and just have to be careful, keep an open mind, and there's a lot to find in many places where you'd least expect it. You know?
Yeah, I agree.
You know, and we all have that capability. We all have that ability. You know, you just have to trust your ancestors and ask to be guided well.
Yeah, thanks, Alejandro. I agree with that too. I wanted to point out, I have a friend, Juan. He's really he told me long ago to watch
these.
Yeah, I really got to watch this movie. And to Juan and to my guest, I think after this live, unless the other guests that I would have on in the future wants to have a live, I'm really going to focus on videos of just like of non-lives, just like educational videos for about a week or two. So might take a little break from the lives just so I can focus on these. So Brace of the Serpent will be one of those soon. So thank you, Juan. Because I've meant to watch this. I guess it's a movie about indigenous people in Brazil. And
Embrace the Serpent. Oh, look, it's from Brazil, about Brazil. Oh, I would love to watch that. I used to have a collection of or list of movies, indigenous or native movies, done by native people and non-native people, like exposing the condition of our people in South America, whether it be in the jungle or in an urban setting. And I have to find a way to look up those movies again. You know, it's they're really, really good. There's a, you know, and that's where I got the meme that I made with John Wayne, where we've been living on, my family's had this land for 3 generations, and then we have I put an image of a grandmother, a native grandmother, just like he was just laughing. You know, it's like I got that from one of those movies in South America. I think it was from Uruguay or Paraguay or maybe even Bolivia, but where the rancher is telling the native people who are camped out in front of the ranch land because they got kicked off. And they're camped out by the barbed wire right there on the road, and they keep jumping over the fence to hunt and to go fishing because those were their hunting grounds. And they get caught on the land by the rancher, and the rancher's like, "You guys, you can't be doing this anymore. Come on, this is ridiculous. This land has been in my family for 4 or 5 generations." And then the 2 older men, they looked at him, and then they just look at each other like, this guy's out of his mind. It's like, and how long have we been here for? How many generations? It's like we can't even count them anymore. You know, so there's some really good movies out there. So if like Embrace the Serpent, I'm gonna look it up then. Thank you, Juan.
Juan said it's a Colombian Amazonia, so
Colombian. Okay.
Yeah.
Embrace the Serpent from Colombia.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Juan. Okay. I'll answer like one more question. I think it's from Sylvia, and then one. Gotta go to bed soon. Where'd that go? Okay, right here. Has a guest practiced the coyote?
Toltecayot. The essence of being Toltec or Tolteca. Well, you know what? I do question it. I do question that the validity, especially that author who was it, the Four Agreements. I honestly don't know if that is instinctually or like authentically Tolteca. I'm not sure. I don't know where he gets his information from, but from what I know, what I've learned from people in Mexico, this one man especially out in Puebla. Tolteca comes from, refers to the people from Tula, Hidalgo, or the land of Tulas, or what are they called? The reed plants grew in abundance. And he said, these are the people who made the petates, or the grass mats, from the reed plant, from the leaves of the reed plant. And he said, also, metaphorically speaking, these were the people who were very knowledgeable in creating and managing large societies or urban civilizations. They were the ones who, metaphorically knew how to intertwine people and maintain a society or an urbanized civilization by intertwining people and bringing communities together to form larger ones. So that he told me that was metaphorically the essence of being Tolteca. Also, Tolteca can also mean an artisan of various craft or trade. I have a friend who's African American or African descent, born here on the Western Hemisphere. And way back in the MySpace days, he reached out to me without even knowing. He said, "I'm intrigued by your page and the information you share on your profile. Let me introduce myself." And I still have his letters. I saved them. He reconnected with his spirituality and his ancestors from Merita or Tamari, whichever way in the Medu language means beloved land, which is today called Africa. And I asked him about the so-called, what are they called? The Dogon people. And he said, Dogon just means a master of a trade or a craft. He said we had the Dogon for architecture, the Dogon for agriculture, the Dogon for painting or artistry. We had the Dogon for the priest class or the priesthood, who were expert practitioners of rituals and ceremonies. So Dogon was a level of consciousness or like mastership of a certain trade or craft. And the way the Toltecayot or Toltec people are described as, like, they were masters of their crafts. So maybe in essence it wasn't really a racial group, but it was someone who became a master, a man or woman who became a master of their craft or trade. And it could even be like a level of consciousness as well, I don't know much about it, but that's all I can say about and practicing Toltecayot. I don't know how to practice that,
No, I
maybe.
appreciate you responding to her.
Huh?
I knew nothing about it, so I learned a lot.
The so-called Toltec people, but Tolteca comes from it's a Nahuatl word applied to the people who lived in the region of Hidalgo and lived in Tula or Tolan, what is now Tula, Hidalgo. Or they say that that's where they like congregated. And there were people from other large urbanized societies that all congregated there.
Yeah,
So
it's
it was,
crazy how.
it was a metropolitan epicenter at one point, you know.
Yeah. Thanks, Alejandro, for sharing all
Yeah,
that
no,
knowledge
not a
again.
problem.
Just wanted to respond to a couple things. Yeah, I mean, I'm glad this can be, serve as a space for our friends on here, for those that are interested and want to learn more, and like Alejandro said, open their minds to
Yeah.
all.
You have the ability or the capability or the to search out ceremony, and you're going to have to jump a lot of hurdles. There's a lot of charlatans out there. There's a lot of people there abusing men and women under the guise of being so-called shamanic practitioners or spiritual practitioners, and there's a lot of abusive people out there. You just be very careful. If you have to be coerced to participate in a ceremony, that's proselytizing. That's trying to impose on people that they must practice your religion. So people search for that ceremony to connect. You're not forced to go to ceremony. You're not in. You shouldn't be coerced into attending ceremony. But people can definitely open the door and invite. Hey, you're welcome to come. We're going to be coming to. We're gonna be having a ceremony of one form or another. So just watch out for that. There's a lot of abusers out there, men and women alike. So and they all these and Thomas just said something about plastic. What did he say? Plastic shamans, and pretend Indians. Yeah, there's a lot of them out there.
Yeah,
Watch out
gotta
for
be careful.
shamans and pretend Indians. And even if people are calling themselves if they're Turtle Islanders and they're calling themselves shamans, watch out. Shaman is not a word in any of our languages anyway, so that tells you that they are not practicing our ancestral ways of being, and a lot of our original practitioners maintaining any original or any form of our ceremonies, a lot of them like to stay underground, so it's up to us to look for it, and seek them out and ask if we can attend too, and always take offerings, take gifts to the people. So, but watch out for the abusers, man.
Yeah, I agree. Alejandro, I think you froze, man. Oh. I'll answer this question and wrap things up. And how do you feel about Native people that embrace religions like on the hardcore level?
European religions.
Yeah, and to be honest, from my opinion, I mean, as long as you're not like extreme, like with other people, and you just like keep these opinions to yourself, like that's fine with me. I always try to be really inclusive, even if you're believing in Christian or Catholic or Islam or whatever, it's fine because so many of our Southern relatives are Catholic, right? So if they're willing to learn and open their mind up about learning about their identity, it doesn't make sense to attack them on their religion, right? Because the point of this is to bring people together, regardless of if they're Catholic or Christian or anything of that nature, right? It's what they believe in. So who am I to attack it? Even if it is like, if it was brought by Spaniards and enforced on Native people, it's sad when that would happen, but we're in 2022 and I'm not going to attack someone because they follow a different faith. Again, like if it's hardcore, as long as just keep it to yourself, like don't go extreme on someone, and it is what it is. Obviously extremists that push their views through force and whatnot is not good. I agree. But yeah, Alejandro was gone, so I'll give him like a minute, and I'm gonna wrap this up because it's like been 3 hours. My gosh. How do you feel about natives embracing strong foreign religions? As I said before, it's okay with me. Everyone embraces something. I'm not going to attack someone because, again, like I don't want to repeat myself. If they're Christian, that's okay. It's Catholic, that's okay. Because the point of this channel is to bring people together from different backgrounds, right? The channel doesn't support attacking people because you're Muslim or Christian. So, yeah. And if you're an Indigenous, oh, thanks, Alejandro.
Yeah, I agree 100%. You know, if let them practice what they want, you know, let them practice it. Choice. You know, I mean, we're not going to put you down, but just don't impose that on others as saying that they must, you know, follow that. You know, that's what got us in trouble in the first place. And that's why we say, like, people who are trying to force even native, any Turtle Islander rituals or ceremonies or anything on others, you know, well, heck, maybe sometimes it must be, you know, just like you need to reconnect. You get your head out of your butt. Yeah. Who knows? But I don't have the answer or the answers. But you know, seek ceremony if that's what you feel that the direction you must go, and don't force that on other people. They're gonna look for it in one form or another. Invite other people willing, you know, voluntarily. Like, hey, if you want to go, we're gonna go. You know. And always ask for permission to invite people if you're invited to a ceremony.
Yeah.
You know, don't barge in. Don't think that you have a right to be there just because you found your identity. You know, it's like, you know, we can't be European about this and barge into other people's houses and impose our rules on other people or our opinions or our viewpoints on others, you know. But, you know, it's like if people feel that, you know, they if they feel comfortable in the Europeans' religions, fine.
You know? Because then we're turning away millions of people that follow
Catholicism. The point what we want first, we're trying to plant the seeds in your heads of, you know, you are Native American, you're a Turtle Islander, you're original to this land.
Yeah.
You know, eventually everything else will take root and the process will begin to get you out of the matrix. And that's up to you if you want to get out of that or not.
Gotta get that red pill.
Yeah,
I love that movie. But yeah, guys, I think we're gonna wrap up the questions. Alejandro, thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you for having me here, brother. I really appreciate it, and never give up, keep going. And I want to give a shout out here to Thomas. I think he has like a cache of really good videos on his channel. I haven't seen, you know, I haven't gone and checked to see what he's got there, but and if I'm not mistaken, he has a video up on his page where there's a Lakota man who's talking about the Haudenosaunee, or the, what do they call them? The Five Nations. Haudenosaunee, they call them what? The Yomanam. Who's that? Chico de Foster or something? Amanam. Yomanam. Chico de Coster. He's speaking Coahuilteca, Yoecuepila language.
Okay.
About the Haudenosaunee people and how they shaped the American government to what it is now, because a lot of the ideas from the so-called United States founding fathers were based off of the Haudenosaunee, or the so-called Iroquois Confederacy, the Haudenosaunee nations, ideas on how their form of governance helped form what the United States has now, and what they're destroying. And I mean, anything in their hands, you know, turns to, you know what, as Donald Trump said, turns to shit or something like that. You know, look what they've done with it. But Aslan X, I think that's a brother I know too. I could tell by the name. And Iroquois Confederacy, Democracy and Culture. Yes. Yeah, I think there was a snippet at the end of one of the videos where this Lakota man was talking about that.
Yeah. Sylvia, what did you want the link to? Hey, Alejandro, I think maybe if they're referring to the information that you had, if you wouldn't mind sharing that in the comment section once the video is over, whenever you have time, of course.
Yeah, I think I can do that right now as we're speaking. I think you're waiting for a comment from Sylvia.
Yeah, I'm not sure what she was referring to, but maybe you know, Alejandro. Oh, Thomas's videos, the link to his channel.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I can do that really quick. Just type it in here. Comma. There it is. Okay. It's gonna copy and paste, and then we'll be good to go. It's gonna copy, paste, and then we'll be good to go. Heard my voice. Okay. We can talk for a couple minutes after Alejandro, but I'm going to tell everyone in the chat, thank you all. Those native, supporters, allies, everyone in here. We wouldn't have gotten this far without you guys. So thank you all very much. I'm going to turn off this live now, but I hope you all have a good night or a good morning. Wherever you guys. Whoa, who's Brown Continent? Is that somebody else?
I haven't commented.
Brown Continent, you came in at the end.
Yeah, sorry. I mean, because I'm busy talking with you, so.
Oh, that's you. Okay, I didn't know that was you, Alejandro. Sorry. I didn't hear that part. Okay, yeah, but yeah, it's midnight, so we're gonna end this broadcast now. So remember, if you guys like the video, please leave a like. Would appreciate it. But we'll talk to y'all later.
Good night, everybody. Thank you all for everything. Look us up on Instagram, Brown Continent, and I just commented here in the comment section. That's our page. We have one video. Eventually, I'm going to upload all the videos that Facebook took down to that page, and we have another YouTube page that I'll be transferring videos from there as well. And look up browncontinent.com. I'll share an identity information package that people can take from the website with articles and PDF flyers that they can pass out, and it has a QR code. And I'll share all that info with you, Marcus. So if you'd like, if you want to put it up on the comment or the description for this video.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Alejandro.
Okay.
I'll do that.
Appreciate it, brother. Thank you for having us. It's always an honor, and keep now that you're all IP going.
Yeah. I'm gonna end the broadcast really quick. Good night, everybody. Goodbye.